Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. My name's Todd Pearson, here with my friend and partner in Rapid City, South Dakota, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, I'm really excited about this episode. This is going to be a lot of fun, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, man. It's good to see you. How was your nap?
Great. Man, I'll tell you, having your 14-year-old grandson here really wears a guy out. They have weird sleep habits. So anyway, but it was nice. Thanks.
Well, thank you for joining us. And we are very excited, like Wes said, for this episode this week. On the program, we have Charles Ragins, who is a Emmy award-winning animator that works on The Simpsons and has worked on numerous other projects there in LA. And he's also a former classmate of mine. We both grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska. Charles, how you doing this evening?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm so excited. It's great to see your face, and it's been a long time.
It has been a long time. And we're still out. We're still alive.
Exactly. I never thought. I really didn't think I'd make it to this age. So I'm pretty happy. I don't know how you feel about it, but
well, I didn't think I'd make it to this age, and I didn't think I'd make it to this age talking to you. And that's you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. Yeah. How weird is the world?
Yeah.
We get to do this, and we're doing it via Zoom.
30 plus years later, and here we are.
Yeah. If you would have told us back in art class at West Valley High School that, 30 some odd years later, we would be talking via Zoom and it would be a pandemic, I would have said, no way. It ain't happening.
Exactly. What's Zoom?
Yeah, what is Zoom? It's the PBS
Internet
program,
it's
right?
Exactly. I was going to say that. It's like, I'm going to be on Zoom? What? As a 50-year-old? No way.
And we do that weird Zoom talk. What was that Zoom thing that they did?
It's some like rap, like early rap or something.
It's where you mess with the syllables or something.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Do you know what I'm talking about, Wes?
Mm-mm.
You're a little older than us, so you might have missed.
I probably grew out of that quicker.
You missed the Zoom ship, but yeah.
I was all about Electric Company.
It was Morgan Freeman and Rita Moreno.
That's right.
Who knew, right?
That was so funny. That's so fun to go back and look at old episodes because I can remember like devouring that because it was before Sesame Street and the precursor. Yeah, that's funny. Yep. I am older. Thanks for pointing that out, Todd. Appreciate that.
Hey, no problem. But it was actually the same era. It was like, at least in Alaska, I think it was, late afternoon. It was like Electric Company. And then I think they had like Zoom on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yeah. And that does, I'm inspired by those things artistically. So, the fact that we're bringing it up is kind of appropriate.
Those were cool programs.
Yeah.
I don't, my kids are old enough now. I don't know what kind of kids programs, are out there. But I thought that was pretty cool programming, actually.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about what you do in the world of art. So I already mentioned to the listeners that we both grew up in Fairbanks, Alaska. You were born there as well?
Yes, I was born there.
Okay.
Yep.
And you went to we went to different elementary schools, I think, but were you always interested in art as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, as far back as I can remember, I was drawing. I had this interest in making things look real. So even when I was a little kid, probably all the way back to, kindergarten, first grade, I was always drawing. And I remember my second grade teacher especially would save some things that I'd worked on, and she made a scrapbook of things that I'd done, and she pointed it out to my parents, and they started putting me into art classes outside of the school. So, my first art class I remember was called Journey into the Artistic, and it was at a place called Tanana Valley Community College, and it was for, it was like a summer program, and other kids also took this class. I think I was 7 or 8. I think it was 1977. Yeah. And I remember that class just being one of kind of a pivotal moment in my artistic development. Like, the art teacher thought I was pretty good, and they would and his name was Mr. Lentine, and John Lentine, and he actually taught both you and I art in junior high as we got older. But he was kind of a local personality and fixture where he was a magician and an artist and a musician. And I remember just being really inspired by like all of the different things he was good at. And I'm like, wow, if I was just as good as him at one thing, that would be so cool. So he was one of those local guys that you could look up to and say, yeah, I want to be like him when I grow up, and there, in terms of art, there were a lot of like fine artists. There were a lot of people who did music, but I didn't see a lot of people that did commercial art so much. Maybe a few graphic designers in town, but that's kind of where I was looking, is like fine art, but also like, how do you make a living at this? And even at 7 or 8 years old, I sold my first drawing. It was a Charlie Brown character. I was walking around the neighborhood selling these little drawings that I did. And I would sell colored originals for 25 cents and black and white line art for a dime. Right. And so I came home and I was all excited. I sold my first, my drawing at 8 years old, and it was a Charlie Brown. And so it's kind of like, you look at what I'm doing now and it's kind of like, wow, that's kind of a precursor for things to come. I was entrepreneurial and I was, making money at something I really loved doing. So, and then it just kind of went from there.
That's awesome, man. Did your parents have any inkling? Like you said, like kindergarten, first grade, you already had an interest in
Mm-hmm.
drawing realistic things. Like, did they have any idea at that young age that you potentially had this talent?
I think they were really good at, finding the things that we were seeing, what we were passionate about, and just kind of like opening the way for us to kind of go there. And so my sister's a musician, and they did the same thing with her. It wasn't so much like they were pushing me in any direction. It was more like they were seeing what I was passionate about. They were seeing what I was driven to. And then they just created opportunities for me to flourish. Like they gave me all the opportunities there really were in a small town to seize on and develop from. So, I mean, so that first art class was great. And then it just led into, by the time I was in 5th or 6th grade, I decided I'm going to be a professional artist. By the time I was 12, I didn't really know what that looked like, but I was taking, do you remember the paint pot? Do you remember the paint pot store in Fairbanks?
I do.
They sold, art supplies, and I think they might've had a small little gallery in the corner or something. But the woman who owned that place, her name was Jinx Sturgis. Now Jinx Whitaker. She's actually married to the former mayor of Fairbanks now, and she has had this big gallery up in Fairbanks called New Horizons. But before all that, she owned this little art supply store, and they would have classes there for adults. But I was able to get into this adult class as a 12-year-old, and everybody was kind of a beginner. And so I was kind of at the same level as all these, adults were. And it kind of made me proud of where I was at 12, able to do this. And at about the same time, and I was, this is like taking watercolor classes and drawing classes. And I remember in 6th grade also, my teachers took notice of all of the extra projects I was doing outside of school. And when there was this big kind of ice cream social, art show for like, everybody was like, did these posters advertising, it's bad to drink and drive. So it was like Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And that was like that was the beginning of it all. And we all did a poster for this. But as part of that, they gave me my own separate, like, one-man show in the corner. And I had like 10 things that I'd done outside of school. And then I had an article in the local newspaper about that I did this. And then the reporter was asking me, all these questions, and it came, it was like this small little article, Artist of the Week, University Park Boy makes mark in art, right? And I'm like, that is so cool. I get recognized for this. I love doing it. And it was really that moment or that time in my life that really told me like, this is really what I want to do. And I kind of really never looked back. I never decided I would rather do anything else more than that. I was, good in school and I would do pretty well in most subjects, but it was really at that point, I just dedicated myself to learning more about being an artist, what it takes, and, where do I go from here? Like how, what colleges are there? I started looking at colleges by the time I was like in 7th or 8th grade. And by the time I was in 9th grade, I picked the one out that I wanted to go to, Rhode Island School of Design, and made it my mission to get in there. And so I ended up, doing everything I could and ended up getting in.
Is that
eventually.
a pretty competitive art school?
Yeah.
At the time,
it is. It's a really well known, especially on the East Coast. They call it the Harvard of art schools. I'm not sure if that's really true, but it's a tough school to get into and a tough school to stay into.
Wow.
It's tough.
So what did you do to like you said, you kind of prepared and that was your goal and you were going to get in it. So what did you do in high school to make sure you were on that path to get into Rhode Island?
I took art, every quarter, every semester, however it went. And by the time I was probably a sophomore or junior, I was kind of creating my own curriculum with the art teacher. Her name's Dana Stratton. I'm actually still in touch with her. And I would do my junior and senior year in high school, I did AP art portfolios. So there was a directive there where you have it's its own curriculum. You have a set of parameters that you have to fulfill on. And there are 2 different portfolios. There was a drawing portfolio and I think design portfolio. And so one year I did the drawing one and the next year I did the design one. So the drawing one obviously is like drawing and painting. And the design one was like 2D design, 3D design, sculpture, different things like that are like mixed medium, type of stuff. And in between the 2, I actually went to a pre-college program at Rhode Island School of Design for 6 weeks. And so that, really determined that I wanted to go there. Like it was a 6-week, and even there, you declare a major. So it's like being a freshman, right? You declare a major and you go in and you take required courses, and then you have these, kind of elective courses. So it's very much like a freshman year. And so I did well there and I had a blast. It was an amazing experience going from Fairbanks, Alaska to Providence, Rhode Island, and just, diving into what I said I wanted to do and just to make sure this is what I want to do. And and that really kind of nailed it down for me. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. And I really thought at that point, I thought I'd be a graphic designer. Later, I, changed my mind and went into illustration. But yeah, that's some of the stuff that I did to prepare. And, and actually also the other thing, and one of the things about your podcast that I like is you talk to artists about how they make money. As much as I like doing art, it's like, I also wanted to figure out a way of making money at it. So by the time I was 14, I was taking on like freelance projects as a professional illustrator in town. And in Fairbanks, there weren't that many people doing it. And so I would like enter competitions. And I remember when I was 14, there was a competition for designing the new logo for the Hockey Association. People from all over town were entering this thing, and I ended up winning, and they made, pins out of my designs. And to this day, it looks like they're still kind of using some inspirations of stuff that I did like, a long, long time ago. And I would end up, in high school, I'd end up like doing calligraphy for like a lot of certificates of like sports, and like the hockey team would hire me to do like all their covers. And it was just kind of, it was so much fun. And I got a lot out of it. I got a lot out of what is it like to get an assignment as an illustrator and then fulfill that assignment and then get paid at the end of the end of the project. And, that's stuff to this day you have to know, and you have to figure out how to do. It's not just doing the art, but it's how do you get paid for it too. So those are some of the early things that I did to kind of lead me into what I'm doing now.
That's crazy. I love your determination as a young teenager, how you're determined to that's what you're going to do. Because I think a lot of people, I don't, well, I guess I knew that I wanted to be in the Marine Corps. I think that was that's where I thought my direction would go. But there's a lot of people that just, they have no clue what they want to be. And my grandson wants to be a director. Todd.
Yeah, I see
Todd, you're a photographer.
Yeah.
My grandson wants to be a director. And he's really been talking the show. I was just like really impressed with somebody that really knows what they want to do. So you're a perfect example of that. And so getting into Rhode Island, I'm assuming you had to send your portfolio, or was that?
Yeah.
And then it's all juried and then selected?
Yeah. So there's a required, I remember this distinctly. Like it was almost like an SAT for the art part, where everybody had to do the same assignment. It was kind of like the way that you could kind of, test everybody on this, from the same kind of set of parameters. And so I remember one of the things that I had to draw was a bicycle, like a drawing of a bicycle. And they didn't tell you how, but, I remember like drawing this really funky angle of the bicycle, and not, having the whole thing in there, and having it be almost like you could kind of tell what it is, you kind of can't. But then being really realistic about the actual object. And so composing it in a really interesting way that you don't normally see a bicycle, but making the actual object of the bicycle as realistic as I possibly could. And then, there was one or two other things I can't quite remember now, but every student had to do that. And I thought, well, it's kind of unfair because, I was already a good draftsman, but there were people that I went to school with that were freshmen. That's like, that's not what they were going to art school for, to draw. They were going there to like be a photographer or be, another discipline that didn't necessarily have drawing as its core, foundation. But, everybody had their own way of getting in, and it was, oftentimes it's the creative solution. Say you're maybe weak in a certain area, then you get real creative about what it is that, how you're going to solve this, that plays on, makes a strength out of your weakness, which I think that's one of the things they're also looking at, is like, well, how do you creatively solve this problem? And so I think in terms of what I got out of the whole experience of going to Rhode Island School of Design is, just thinking more broadly and creative problem solving, which has helped me in so many different ways throughout life. Just thinking, outside of the box, and not just being a technically skilled artist, but one that is able to think and problem solve in more expansive ways.
That's really cool. I was telling Wes before the program, I think I've always thought of you, if you said Charlie Ragins in school, I would have said artist, but that would have been the first word that came out of my mouth, because that's who I identified you as. As soon as I knew you or who you were always the artist. And I told Wes, I said, if you talk to anybody that went to West Valley High School and they were paying attention from the years 1983 to 87, if you asked who's the best artist or most talented artist in the school, I would put money on it that the first person they would say is yourself. So it's amazing that you had that.
Thanks.
And I remember you in art class, and when you mentioned the whole calligraphy thing, I actually remember you like sitting down and doing all those different certificates and stuff. I remember seeing you do that. But I just remember you, in art class, you were always just completely just laser focused,
Yeah. I think it was really so much of that drive kind of came out of, just trying to find an identity for myself that I felt like really comfortable with. And it's like, so many kids want to find that, some kids find it in sports, some find it in acting or music. And I found it in art, and I felt like I really needed that. Like, if I didn't have that, I would be lost somehow. And it's like, I don't want to be lost. I want to know, like, I want to have an answer for where I'm heading, I don't know what it's like not to have that. I've always had that. And I remember even back when I had my first interview for the local newspaper there, I remember knowing that this is going to be my future. Like, this is not going to be the last article written about me in a paper, or, and I just had it like, okay, there's something that I'm going to do with my art that's going to be, substantial. I don't know what it is. It's going to be important in one way or another. And it's, I'm going to get some kind of attention for it, which I love getting attention. Like, who doesn't, for what you're good at. And I think that those early moments that had me, get attention for myself for what I was good at, made me more confident as a young man, and had me, just want to keep pursuing it, and finding, self satisfaction in what it is I do. I mean, it's really cool to do that. And then, especially when, I started getting my stuff published, and it would like go all over the place. And like, my work was like in other towns and cities and states and countries, once I started getting a little taste of that was really fun.
So I want to go back to your collegiate experience just briefly. You talked about it's one thing to get in, but it's also difficult to stay in. Can you address that a little bit?
Well, I think that you have to be, if you choose to be in like in a specific like art school, or like a vocation that's very specific, you want to make sure that that's, what it is you want to do. And, I think that when you get into a school like that, there's just very high expectations. It's like, they don't, admit you to try you out. They admit you to like have you graduate and be successful in life. And they don't want to be wrong about that. And so, as much as they want to see you succeed, it's like, it's really your deal. Like, you really have to want it. There has to be a drive within you to want to keep going at it. And I could see like I just know, like, I remember freshman year is always the highest turnover. We would have like a quarter of the students would end up leaving, something like that, or they would transfer out. And then they also had a high rate of transfer students in, like people who, went off somewhere else and got real dedicated to then getting into RISD as like a sophomore, something like that, where, they got real focused and got themselves prepared. And they were oftentimes the most successful students because they took more time to like really know what they want, instead of just like, oh, I'm going to work really hard, but I'm not quite sure what it is that I want to do. RISD was unique in that you really had to declare your major pretty early on. I mean, by the time I think you had to declare your major by the end of your freshman year.
Wow.
And, I remember really kind of freaking out about that. It's like, oh no, it's like, I'm determining the rest of my life and I'm only 19. That's crazy. And I remember thinking between graphic design and illustration, and I didn't really even know what an illustrator was. I didn't know that's actually what I was doing for like several years before that. I was drawing and doing handwriting type or whatever, and getting paid for it. Well, that's what an illustrator does, and also a graphic designer. So I was kind of doing both. But a friend of mine who was also a freshman at the school there said, "You like to draw too much. You shouldn't be a graphic designer. You're gonna, it's gonna drive you nuts just setting type all the time." And she was right. I picked the right major, and illustration happened to be the one that also had the most freedom. Like, you could take more electives, and illustration kind of had a broader kind of a appeal. Like, what is illustration? It could be anything, whereas graphic design was a lot more rigid. There was a kind of a school of thought, and it seemed to be just a smaller and more, directed and specific major than illustration, which seemed to be a lot more free, so I ended up going into illustration, and I ended up getting really interested in children's books. As a sophomore, I'm like, okay, well, I'm in illustration. What kind of illustrator do I want to be? And I took a class as a sophomore called Approaches to Illustration, and each assignment was a different type of illustration assignment you would get out in the real world. Like there'd be something. There would be like an editorial illustration for a magazine. There would be an advertisement. There would be a few different types, and then there was children's books illustration. You'd be given like an Aesop's fable, and you'd be asked to, you take 2 weeks, and you bring the sketch in the first week, and then the finish in the second week, and you'd have a little piece of the story, and you just illustrate, something that was of interest to you that you found would be a good partner with the text. So the visual partner with the text, and we would have these critiques, and you'd put your stuff up on the wall. And I remember, wow, this is really tough, because I'm used to just everybody saying, "Oh yeah, you're great," or not, except for my mom. She wasn't like that. She'd be like, "Yeah, but you could do this and this and this." But at RISD, your stuff would just get, if the teacher didn't like it, they would just like tear it off the wall sometimes, and you would. You'd find out how not good you are all of a sudden compared to the whole rest of the world of talented people, and it was kind of a real kick in the butt for me. I wasn't like the best anymore. And I don't know if I actually ever was, but at least at Rhode Island School of Design, like every like best artist in every high school was there, like all in the same school now. It's like they were all like the best of where they were, right? So I was just in a much different pool of students at that point. But it was good. It was exhilarating and scary at the same time.
It can be pretty humbling being in art school critique, and especially like you said, when you were the upper echelon at the very pinnacle of where you came from, and then you get thrown in with all these other people, like you said, from all over the place that were also, of that upper echelon. And it's competitive, and it can be humbling, and it can be scary at times too, depending on the instructor.
Well, and I was like, well, I better do this, because there is no like plan B. It's like I did not think, well, what else am I going to do? I really it was like all my eggs were in the art basket. It's like the only thing I could think of is like, well, maybe I could go teach it if I don't end up like doing it, but I thought, I'm really going to work hard and see. I'm in a great position here. I'm in this great school. I'm surrounded by these amazing instructors and people who've done some amazing things with their own careers that are working there as teachers. It's like if I can't dedicate myself to this and make it here, then I shouldn't be there. So I just took it very seriously and did as well as I could.
It's cool that you had that you were able to see that hey, if I can't make it here, I'm not going to cut it in the real world, So I might give it all that I can and make it happen.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. This is a question we haven't asked in a while. It's our art school question. And did you get a lot of marketing and business classes there at the Rhode Island School of Design?
There was a class that was required of all, I know illustration students at least, called professional practice. And, it was a class that was about, yes, marketing yourself. It was about, how to deal with clients, how to find clients, how to network yourself, kind of how to put your materials together. At the time, there was no internet, so it wasn't like you were building websites, but working at putting like a business card together, and also learning about contracts and pricing and the legal aspects and kill fees, something like that. It's like, what if, somebody like has you do all this work and then they don't like it? It's like, you still have to make something off of it. What do you do? And so, yes, there were general classes about that. And then I think there were also more deeper specific classes if you wanted them, but there was at least one that was required of every illustration student at least. And I know that most of the other majors probably had something similar, because one thing RISD wanted to prepare you for was actually working, not just being a great artist and creative person, but also someone who can actually make it. And I think the parents who were sending their kids there, I think the school really wanted to show the parents that their kids are going to come out and they're actually going to make something of themselves in terms of creating a career for themselves where they actually do make money. That's, I think that a lot of the parents who were sending their kids there, that was a big concern. And that was a concern that the RISD took very seriously, in marketing themselves and showing this is, we provide these things here for your students. So they will be prepared when they get out. And in some ways I was prepared, in other ways I wasn't. And it was really, I think, my own, I think that everyone has their own kind of threshold of interest in knowing like the business side of their art. It's like, yeah, there could be all the opportunities around you, but if you don't take them, or if you don't like really get in and learn the stuff, then you can only go so far. So like, I remember knowing that I'm not really cut out for like full-time freelance work. It's more like, I like the idea of working for someone and then doing my work, my personal work, on top of that or along with that. When I graduated RISD, I thought that what I would be doing was getting a teaching degree and then teaching while I'm, taking on like a book contract and illustrating a book or illustrating magazines or what have you. So I would have that kind of balance, and also having that social balance and that network of people that I could constantly be around instead of being alone all the time. And I learned that after I graduated, like what kind of quality of life as a person and as an artist that I wanted to have. And I experimented. I did, I had a couple of children's books published when I was really young. I went back to Alaska and illustrated a book called Anna's Athabascan Summer by a local author who wrote books on the native cultures up in Alaska. And my work just happened to be hanging in a high school alumni show at West Valley, and the librarian knew the author. Author was looking for someone to illustrate his book, and the librarian said, "Oh, you should check this guy's work out." And it was just a few children's book pieces that I'd done at RISD that were hanging up on the wall, and my former art teacher from West Valley called me up saying that this author's looking for an illustrator. And so it's kind of like having my work at the right place at the right time, but then also knowing like, well, how do you deal with a publisher all of a sudden when you've never really done that before? And I was very young and very naive. It's like, I just, when they offered me a deal, I'm just like, yeah, that sounds great, and I didn't like really check around to see if that was the right amount of money, or I was just happy to get a job, and as you get older and you've done more work, you know what to compare compare jobs to, and everybody has that learning curve. And I had a number of things that I probably could have done a lot better at, but I was young, and that was a way to learn.
For that learning curve, for sure.
Yeah.
Pricing is always hard when you're getting started in your art career, as far as, how to compare it and what to compare it to. And especially if you don't have other people that you can bounce things off of, other artists or whatever. I don't know if you had that or not.
Well, I had it's interesting because I was doing this children's book up in Alaska, and I knew of like some of the top artists, fine artists, who were also making it, they were making quite a good living, and they were very seasoned and pretty far along. And would get myself out there and start having conversations with people over time as I was doing more work, and I would learn from them, so that I would, I would kind of seek out mentors for different things that I was doing. I'll just say this, that when I graduated RISD, I really thought I want to illustrate children's books. This is really what I want to do. But it's not a lucrative thing, and it takes a long time to do a book. I mean, especially the way that I, illustrated my first book it took me 1.5 years to do the one book, and so you have to be doing other things while you're doing that book. Like I was a bellman in a hotel the entire time. I was doing other illustration jobs that would make me money. I would, there's so many different things I was doing to make money here and there, and I think that's just kind of the starving artist way of going about things. It's like when you're just getting going, it's like you're not just making a living doing your art. And it's like, if you do get that one book, it's like, that's a huge deal, just getting a book contract. It's like, I got a book contract just 1 year out of college, which it's actually, for a RISD student, that's not that unheard of, because, you're preparing yourself the entire time. When I was talking to people who I was like in like a writer's group with, up in Fairbanks, it's like they've been at it for 10 or 20 years and they hadn't gotten one yet. And so I felt really fortunate that everything kind of lined up really, really early. It was amazing and exhilarating and scary as hell at the same time, because here I was, I barely had anything published. I didn't even know what my style was really. I was just kind of experimenting I had just gotten out of art school. I was experimenting with all sorts of different styles. And so then I have this 32-page, full page colored children's book assignment, and I have to invent a style and paint in a way that I'd never really painted before. And it was really based on the fact that I lived in Fairbanks. I knew enough about the culture that I was illustrating about. And I had a degree from Rhode Island School of Design. That all impressed the publisher. They'd worked with people who graduated from RISD before, and they saw a few things from my portfolio that they thought, oh, this guy could do it. But it's one thing to do like one painting or a couple of paintings from a story, but to do 27, full spreads or full page illustrations is a whole other thing. And it was quite a challenge. And also I found out, I didn't find this out. I already knew I was colorblind. So that was a huge problem.
You're colorblind.
Yeah. So what I didn't realize was, when I knew I was colorblind, but when I was in school, I was doing all these kind of whimsical illustrations where the colors didn't quite matter as much, because it was just like a colorful, world that I was creating. And it was like, it could be a limited palette or something. But then all of a sudden I'm doing these landscapes in Alaska of this native culture on the Yukon River. And it's like, you can't get the colors wrong. And so I was living at home for part of that time, and I'd actually have my mom look at a color green that I was mixing. Is that the right one? And it was unbelievable that I actually was able to pull it off. I look at the book, I'm like, I don't know how the hell I did that, but somehow I was able to, and it ended up turning out pretty good. But it was an excruciatingly difficult experience for me. And I realized that's why I really like black and white line art so much, because you can create volume, you can create life, you can create color, even in some ways with just monotone.
Yeah, with tones. Yeah.
And my art was always much better when I concentrated just on the draftsmanship. My painting was always difficult, and everybody said, well, you have to do color if you're going to be an illustrator. And I realized, ooh, this is going to be rough, to continue this like this. So in stepping forward into what I ended up doing and going into animation, it really kind of made sense for me, because in my career now, it's like I actually never, at least on The Simpsons, I never have to do color. It's a black and white line art that I do, and the color's handled by a whole other department that's really good at it, and none of them are colorblind. At least not the way I am.
Well, so before we go there,
Yeah.
if you don't mind,
I'm kind of all over the
No,
place.
you're
not. You're like right
You're
on.
great,
No,
man.
I appreciate
Okay,
that. I'm sitting on the edge of my chair because you just threw out there that you were colorblind, and I was like not prepared for that. So, but I wanted. So you also did a book called The Boy in the North Wind.
Yeah.
So how was that experience different? Because it was a different writer, and same publisher or
different publisher. In fact, completely different experience, night and day. And I'm glad you're asking about that because the first book took me a year and a half. The second book took me a month.
Wow.
Nice. And the first book was like 27 full page, well, several double page spreads, and then these 1 pages, but they were all like full bleeds. There's like very few like little vignettes in that book. And it was heavily researched. I'd actually stayed with an Athabascan Indian family in the spring and the fall of one summer, and used the family as the models for the characters in my book. So I had to draw the whole thing out, and then figure out how to paint the thing when I got all the compositions worked out and all drawn out. And then also working with the type that they that I had. Now the second book, I was given a month to do it. It was 14 pages, and basically I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? There's no way I'm going to be able to do another book like that, like the first one, in a month. So I was going to do like this kind of woodcut scratchboard style that I really liked working in, but I'm like, that there's no way I'll be able to do the book in that style in that quick a time. So I remembered I had gotten back from Europe, and I'd taken a sketchbook with me, and I did all these like quick line sketches of architecture and different things. And I was looking at it, and I just sent the publisher, which is a different publisher. It was Macmillan McGraw-Hill's, a really big publisher. And this book was for a reading series for fifth grade, like I think it was fifth grade, maybe younger, like across the country. So this thing was going to be all over the place. And it's part of a giant reading series. So there's a couple hundred books probably in this reading series. And so I sent a few drawings in the sketch style that I had. And I said, well, what do you think of this? This is kind of like timeless, kind of turn of the century looking illustration style. And they're like, that'd be great. And so I ended up doing I did a sketch and then a complete illustration in 2 days, sketch another one in the next 2 days. So I had basically 28 days. I had 14, illustrations done. And I'm like, wow. And I made more money in 1 month than I did in like a year and a half. It's like, dang, I think maybe I could be doing this kind of thing. And I think they were totally different experiences. And I think the actual doing of the art was even more enjoyable on the second one. The research and the really getting into it and going off and learning about the native culture and so forth was like a National Geographic experience for the first one. And that was great. The second one just said, wow, I can work in a completely different style. I can do it faster. I'm much more confident at it. I think it's I'm better at it, or at least stylistically, it's more me. And then it was about that time. It's like, wow, I'm much more comfortable just in black and white. How can I just do black and white work and make a living at it? And I found a way, get into animation. Now I've been doing that for years, and I still have done color work, but it's very limited palette. So you see that first book that I did, and I haven't painted like that since. I don't think, maybe a little bit here and there, but nothing quite like that. It was a one-time experience, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to do that quite the same again, So I just pivoted. I didn't give up just because that didn't work out. I found another way, and I think found a better way for me.
So how did that lead you into the world of animation? How did you get that opportunity to go to LA? Did you just say, you know what, this is where all the animation happens, so I'm just going to move to LA? Or were you in contact with other people, friends, acquaintances from art school that, said, hey, guess what? We have...
Yeah, it was the people I knew from RISD. who had gotten into animation long before me. And it wasn't a career that I'd ever thought about, really. I didn't think that would be something I could do. Coming from Fairbanks, Alaska, it's like, that's not a career that's readily available to you. You have to like make a big leap to go do something like that. Whereas in illustration or being a fine artist, you can come from a little town like that and achieve that. But animation, there wasn't anyone local who was doing that. Even when I went to RISD, the RISD folks, a lot of it was like experimental animation. You didn't see a lot of Disney type artists, coming out of RISD. But at the time that I graduated from RISD, The Simpsons was just kind of getting going. Like, I think it was on the Tracy Ullman show right around the time we were graduating from high school, maybe a little bit after that in 1987. And then in 1989, it showed up, as a series. And I know myself and lots of other people became fans of it this first year. And then so there were students that were contemporaries of mine at RISD. They were like, oh, I got to go get on that show. Or, now that that's happening, it's something that's going to open up in animation that wasn't there before. But I wasn't looking at it like, oh, I'm going to go work on that. I'm just like, that's cool, but that's for somebody else. I'm going to go do my thing. In fact, I had a friend of mine who's still on The Simpsons after all this time. He was one of the first guys to go out to LA to work on it. He started on the second season. I remember finding out he got a job on The Simpsons before he even graduated from RISD. He was a year ahead of me. And I thought to myself, why would he do that? That's like, you're just selling out, you're just like, and that show doesn't even look good. It's like anybody that goes to RISD is like better than this show or whatever. But the show is really fun, and I can get like that part. It's like, it was like an instant hit. So it's like, I totally get that part of it. But 30 years later, here I am talking to you guys, and we were just on a Zoom call a few weeks ago in the design department, and my friend Lance and I were talking about this. Oh, you remember when I told you that I couldn't believe that you were going to go work on that show, and now 5, 6, 7 years later, after he got on the show, I got on it. But the reason why I thought that it was a very kind of rudimentary animation at first, and I didn't see myself doing that kind of work. But then as I discovered, I gravitated more towards line art and like creating interesting and whimsical worlds that didn't necessarily have to be realistic, but based in reality. And I started kind of gravitating towards it once I saw that the children's book stuff that I was doing really wasn't as much me as I thought. Stylistically, at least the way I was doing it. And then also the lifestyle, like having to like sit in your studio all by yourself and like make yourself do the work when you don't really want to. And you have almost no other peers around you that are doing the same type of thing. It's like I had mostly writers. I didn't really have artists. No, I didn't know any artists where I was living that was doing what I was doing. I knew some fine artists, but they didn't have a deadline. They were just like doing their work. And it's like, maybe they had a show or something like that. It was just a different, and I just remember like, this is just like very lonely and socially, and doesn't feel right. It's like, I feel like I need to, like, this isn't like a job. It's like, I know it's a job, but it's like, it doesn't feel like a job. Like, I feel like I need to go get a job, even though this is my job. I like to feel like I need to get a job. It's, and I was like doing well. It's like, why do I think this? And I remember saying, like, when I got out of RISD, I'm going to give myself 5 years to kind of do whatever I want. I was going to get out of school, and I was basically going to do all those things that I, always wanted to do, but I hadn't, quite done yet. And also try to give it a go with my own art, teach, whatever I had to do to make a living for 5 years. I just decided from 22 to 26 or 27, I figured if I really screw up, I'm still only 27 by the end of the 5 years. That's not bad. I ended up, I was working for like a cruise company. I was working for Princess Cruises. And I remember going home I was in New York City right after graduating RISD, and I was trying to get like a portfolio together of doing like portrait work, with a mentor that I met at RISD. His name's Alan Reingold, and he's this like big, illustrator in New York. And I thought, oh, I'll go to New York and like he'll teach me the ropes and I'll like get some work, and anything he can't do, he'll throw to me or whatever. And then after about 3 months of that, I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm cut out for, the New York freelance scene at all. That's just not my scene. I need to like go back to nature or something. So I went back to Alaska. I thought, oh, I could go back to school. I can get a teaching degree, something like that. And I ended up like going back to my summer job at this cruise company, throwing bags for Princess Cruises. And then I remember like needing more work. So I would like went to work as a bellman for the Regency Hotel in Fairbanks. And I kept the bellman job pretty much, I think, the entire time I was in Alaska, which was 5 years or 4.5 years or something before I moved to LA. So I would always have like that little money so I didn't have to like starve too much. And it was it was fun. I got to meet some really interesting people. And I actually advertised my first book in the hotel. So the book came out, and like I had the publishing company spend a little bit of money on these advertising tents where there was a picture of me in my bellman uniform, like with the book, right? And like every second or third day, there'd be a new set of grandparents in the rooms at this hotel, like needing something to bring home to their grandkids from Alaska. And so I sold 1,000 books in one summer out of that hotel.
That's awesome.
And it's like a tenth of all the books that I've sold total came from that one summer, in that hotel. And it was like, that was kind of like, so I'm going to make the most of this, and I would, I'd have a stack of signed books. So whoever bought the book would, have a signed copy for me. And it's funny. It's like, I'm signing some tourists a book of mine that I publish, and then I'm like picking up their food off of the hallway floor to take to the kitchen when they're done. It just seemed kind of wrong, but that's what you had to do, right?
Exactly.
I wasn't making enough. I wasn't making enough at my art at the time, and I think I just decided at some point, like I want to know like where my next meal's coming from. I want to know when I can take a vacation. I want to work with, my peers. I want to work with people who are kind of had graduated from like the school I went to or at least, kind of on the same artistic track. And, hold on a second. I got to let my dog in again. Hold on. I'm just going to leave the door open.
It's a game, man. I play this game with my dog all the time.
Yeah. So it's actually really nice that, working from home on The Simpsons. So all day long, my dog just sits at my feet, and she follows me around all day. And, when we were working at the studio, I would be gone for, 10 or 12 hours a day and barely got to see her or the rest of my family. So it's been kind of a blessing for us that both my wife and I can work from home and do what we do. She's an architect, and I'm, working on The Simpsons, and we really didn't miss a beat. We've actually been able to do our jobs fairly well from home.
Nice.
And so just kids out there, if you're listening, learn how to draw, get into animation. So for the next pandemic, you'll always be employed. Just saying. Okay.
That's good advice.
Yeah. If you want to prepare for the pandemic, learn how to draw.
There you go.
I don't know. That probably sounds really wrong, but
no, I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect.
So anyway, just kind of to wrap up the 5-year plan, it's like I did go back to Alaska. I saw Alaska on my own terms. It's like I wanted to like go and like do some backcountry skiing. I wanted to go like, travel around the state, and I was able to actually travel around the state doing workshops in schools with the children's book stuff that I did. And so I was able to go to these unique native villages on the Yukon River. I went to some villages in southwestern Alaska. I'd never been to that part of the state before. And then when I I moved, I ended up going to Southeast Alaska for the very first time. I drove my car down, put it on a ferry, and I was camped out on the deck of the ferry for 5 days. And I'm like, why am I leaving this place? This is so cool. But there's so many parts of Alaska that had I not moved back there for those 5 years, I never would have seen and experienced. And I really got to do it in a way that I did not expect, but a way that really was fulfilling for me. And it's kind of like, picking, all right, for this part of my life, this is what I want to achieve. It's, and kind of, I learned pretty early on, it's like, you don't have to have, an experience that you want to have your whole life. You can just do it once and be fulfilled that you did it. Like, I don't have to spend the rest of my life wishing that I kept doing children's books over and over and over again. I feel really good that I did the ones that I did, and it was super hard, but I did set out and I succeeded at the thing that I said I wanted to do for the time I felt like, I gave it the time that I wanted to give, and then I could see myself maybe going back and doing that at another time. But I like, wow, I was really glad I had that opportunity as a young person to really know by doing whether I really wanted to keep doing it or not. And then seeking out another opportunity that led me to what I'm doing now, still at a pretty young age, to be able to like really make the most of a career over time. I owe that to, I think, always being like, knowing I can make something happen. Like I don't know where that came from. It's probably a lot of it had to do with my parents, like never putting any limits on us. Like they never said, oh no, you couldn't do that. Anything we said we wanted to do, they believed we could. And so, my sister is a world-class musician. She actually tours with the Moody Blues, or did when they were still touring, and now, tours with Justin Hayward, their lead singer. And she's worked with several acts, and she came out of the same little hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska as I did, and so it doesn't really matter where you come from. You can still go off and do pretty cool things outside, or stay there and do cool things. I did that too. I did some cool things while I was there. I did some cool things after I left, and now I'm actually working on something that's kind of brings me back full circle to where, where I started, developing a TV series that's autobiographical and brings back kind of the native culture. And it brings back, I have the unique birth story where I found my birth family in both sides of my birth family in two different ways over the course of the 20-year span. And the project has to do with that too. So it's like I'm now bringing in all these personal aspects of things that I've experienced over time, either by doing them artistically, like through the art that I did about the native cultures in Alaska years and years ago that I experienced, up to more personal things that I've experienced, the last 20 years. And it's like, now I'm combining all of these different aspects of my career into like one bigger project. Like, so I have experience of working on The Simpsons for almost 25 years, but in the last 6 years, I started writing, and I never thought that I would be writing for television, or I don't know why. It's interesting because I've always been around writers. I've always loved to write, but in the last, I don't know, I think 6 years or so, I just got inspired. Like I really kind of want to start doing my own work in animation. I was doing kind of my own work in illustration before, and I continued doing that as a freelancer. And I've done, branding work, and I've done, illustrations and caricatures. And I had a cartoon strip with a friend of mine for about 10 years that was very original. And so I've always kind of had my hands in my own creative pursuits outside of The Simpsons. And I've also been able to put a lot of my own creativity and my own personal life into The Simpsons and some other shows that I've worked on, but mostly The Simpsons. But now, as I had all of these experiences in many different ways, artistically and personally, and in other aspects of my life, it's like to bring it all together and actually start producing something that can be fulfilling on all these different fronts. like literally inventing a project that like every single thing I ever wanted to do or have enjoyed doing, I get to do on this project. So on top of what I do for The Simpsons, which is background design, I've been, for the last 6 years, I've been developing my own project for television, and it's been a really remarkable experience, and taking me places and meeting people, and working in different genres and different creative expressions I never thought even 10 years ago I would be doing. And it's all like, I think it all comes from that place where I was when I was 12, when I said, I don't know what kind of artist I want to be. I just want to be one, And so I never really had it like I had to be a specific artist. There was probably a short amount of time where it's like, I have to be a children's book illustrator. That's what I said I'm going to be. I have to be that. But then when I realized that's not exactly how, like that kind of lifestyle isn't exactly for me. I just kind of gave myself the freedom to be like, okay, well, I can do that and other things, or I can put that away for a while and do something else and then come back to it. I don't have to just suffer doing something I said I was going to do and not want to do it. I can kind of reinvent myself and go do something else. And then maybe 20, 30 years from then, I'll have a whole new perspective and like have a whole new outlook and create something out of those experiences that I never could have had I not freed myself from it, and gone off and done something else. So, I've decided I'm going to have a career of just many artistic experiences. It doesn't have to just be one, that you just do over and over and over.
I think that's awesome. And good for you for recognizing, when it was time to like change gears and explore something else. Cause I think it would be terrible to have this career that you, in your mind, hey, I'm going to be an artist. You've always wanted to be an artist. And then you go down this path and in art school, they want you to really focus or whatever. So you come out of art school and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then, you tried it and then said, okay, I tried it. I'm good. Now I'm going to go explore something else. A lot of people wouldn't have done that. A lot of people would not have been that brave. They would have settled. They would have said, you know what, I'm just going to keep on doing this. And maybe it would work out and they would be happy doing it. They would find that happiness. But you being true to yourself and being able to recognize that, hey, I'm not sure that this is what I want to do for the rest of my art career. And I want to go check something out and making that jump. I mean, that's a huge jump from Fairbanks, Alaska to Los Angeles, California. I can imagine that being kind of, even though you knew people, I can imagine that being kind of a scary thing.
Yeah, it was. And I didn't have a job. It's like I left. This is kind of how it worked. My first book, Anna's Athabascan Summer, launched in the late spring of 1995 at the International Reading Association Conference in Anaheim, California. And so the people I knew, the friends of mine who I knew that were in LA from art school, all worked on The Simpsons. My closest friends actually worked on The Simpsons. So I invited a couple of them down to the book signing, and there was like this Athabascan Indian potlatch to celebrate the launch of the book. And it was fantastic. It was just an amazing experience. It's like, here I was a first-time illustrator, and we had my book, or mine and the author Arnold's book, was the only book that had its own booth in the entire Reading Association conference. It was like the publisher had a booth of all the books, and then they sponsored another booth of just our book. And I'm like, this is amazing. And then I'm also like, yeah, but I don't really want to do another book like that. It's like, that was just so hard. It's like, I just can't, so here I was like, everybody's like, oh my God, you're look at this, you're 25 and you're doing this or whatever. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm just not enjoying it. Like, it's like, how could I, it was so hard. And then it was really this kind of interesting merge of two things happening at the same time. So I had my book, And then my friends invited me to go to the Simpsons studio and just for fun, and I'm like, wow, that'd be so cool. Like look around, see what everybody's doing. And what I noticed when I got there was, man, people are just happy. They're just having a good time. They're goofing off, get a paycheck at the end of every week. They get paid well. And they're all like doing their own individual interesting pursuits outside of work. And it's like they're working on this hit show that everybody in the world like loves this thing, or a lot of people do. And I really got hooked by it. Like I just got into that idea of like, wow, I could like, I just want to be around happy artists that are like really enjoying what they're doing. And at the time, like I think it was 7th season of The Simpsons, it's like it got to look a lot better. And I actually, after my experience of doing more black and white line art and seeing that a lot of the artists, that's really all they did. They're great draftsmen. And I was looking at like, well, as a children's book illustrator that's done a lot of whimsical art that's like, based in reality, but it's not real. It's like, I kind of like, this would kind of be a natural place for me to go to work, because you're inventing something from nothing, but you're basing it in reality. Right. So I actually took a drawing test back home with me, and I got coached on it by some of my friends. And I think it was the following spring. I wasn't just doing that, and I was I don't know how serious I was at it at first, but like, I really do feel like I need to make a change, and I need to make a big change before I get too deep into like my illustration career where I can't like get out of it. Like once you start publishing a bunch of books, or, it's harder to like bail. Yeah,
Totally.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm just being honest. It's like I could just see that, like, oh, if I do, I'm just gonna like hate this experience again if I do this again. And it wasn't all. Trust me, it wasn't all bad. It was amazing stuff, but the actually doing of the work was not the best part. The best part was like going around talking about it after it's done, but you have to do it first. But so I'm like, I really want to work around other artists. I want to be, also, I don't want to be in cold and darkness the rest of my life. So that was another thing. I just had a natural like depression from like starting in October all the way to April. I was just like went downhill and like started kind of coming out of my hole, in like April, just like psychologically, like I just can't deal with that anymore.
Right.
Either. So Southern California was like definitely a new reality in that regard too.
Now I want to ask you about this, because once I left Fairbanks, that was right before my senior year, and then I made a couple journeys back and forth between Colorado and Alaska. I did not realize growing up, it didn't seem to have an effect on me. But once I moved someplace where there was actually sunlight the majority of the year, and moving back, that was difficult. And so you came to that realization that it's rough. It's rough on you.
I had no idea how bad it was when you had to keep your own schedule, and you could get up. If I didn't start my bellman job till like 3 p.m. to like 11 p.m., I was supposed to be up at like 8 a.m. painting, right? So paint for 5 hours before I go to work. Well, if I was like depressed, I just like not paint, because no one was watching me, didn't have to. There was a period of at least a month on my children's book where I got up and like stared at it, didn't do anything. I've like literally deciding whether I wanted to actually finish this book or not, or just kill it and go do something else. And I remember one day my mom said, if you don't finish that book, the whole rest of your life is going to be about you not finishing that book. And if you don't finish that book, you're going to be a bellman, and you're going to be the sad guy who had this great opportunity, blew it. And you're going to look back and be one of those cliche moments, where some guy had this great opportunity and then just spent the rest of his life bitching about him not finishing it, and I just said, yep, that's not going to happen. So I just bit the bullet, and basically, God, what was it? I remember getting so mad that people were like, when is that going to be done? I was just taking forever. And I'm like, just don't ask me anymore. And so I actually lied and said, the book is done. It's at the publisher. And it wasn't done. And I ended up getting a room at the hotel that I was working at and finishing the last month or two of the book in this hotel room by myself, and no one knew I was doing it.
Wow.
It basically it just gave me the freedom to like feel like I had no pressure. I just took the pressure off myself. I mean, it was probably not a good idea to like lie about it, but it was just that bad for me. It's like, it was like that hard. It's like, I just need to get this thing done, and I don't need anybody putting pressure on me. It's like, I'm going through whatever I was going through, depression or whatever. And I just didn't need the added critique of people, And it was cool too, because I would have people come in who I worked with, like other people from the hotel, who just thought it was super cool I was doing it. And they would just come in and like say, oh my God, that's awesome. Right? Instead of like the people that are like, know what I've been through and like, kind of, when are you going to get it done? You're just taking forever on this thing. It's like, I just needed that positive reinforcement from people that didn't know my history about the project. And so I just kind of created that for myself.
That is awesome.
It got it done. Just said, okay, there's parts of this book that I'd hate. Yeah. It's to this day, I'm looking at it like 25 years later. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that day. Can you imagine like having something out in the world? Like, I don't know. It's like you have something out in the world, like you get to look at it for the rest of your life. Like,
well, that's just being an artist.
Yeah. But that's just being an artist. Exactly. And it's like, you have to go with it. It's like, you have to take your bad days with your good days. It's just that, when you have a bad day, it's like, it's in your work and it's, out there. So, I didn't have a choice of like spending into eternity making it perfect. No, you just have to, the book to me, really, it wasn't even done. And I just had to get it out. It's just like, it's done enough. It's like, okay, done. All right. But it's never done.
Never done.
Like
you can,
done.
You could literally obsess about it forever and it would never be exactly the way you'd want it. I think, that's just part of the artist's journey, and being an artist, there's always things that you look at, whatever it is. If you're a painter, photographer, whatever, you go, I wish I would have done that better, or I wish I would have done that differently. But, people that view it don't see it that way. They just look at it and go, oh, wow, that's beautiful. It's a masterpiece. It's lovely. I love it,
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I mean, I'm glad, like if somebody, I remember I drive my wife nuts, like, years ago when I still wasn't really over the whole children's book experience. And I kind of dragged the whole story out over and over when I talked to people like, oh yeah, I did this book and blah, 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 like just kind of vomited out like my experiences. And my wife's like, why do you do that? You're just like bringing up the past over and over. It's like, people are just trying to like tell you what a great job you did. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't believe it. I don't believe it was a great job. So I want to like prove to them that it wasn't good. And here's all the reasons why. And it's like, no one wants to hear that. They just want to experience it for themselves and like either like it or not on their own terms. Like they don't need to hear it from you. And so I don't know, it took me a long time to kind of turn that story around, and like kind of create a positive out of it. And my wife said I hadn't gotten over leaving Alaska and like the whole children's book experience until I won my first Emmy as an animator. She said it took you to winning an Emmy to like get over your past. Like, wow, that's man. I hope that's not the way it is for everybody, because it's true though. It's like I had to feel like I made it. I was successful in another, career path to know, like, to really validate, my choice, that I kind of moved on from that. And now, I feel like I could enter back into that world in a whole nother way, and in a much stronger way, and one with like vastly more experience on
Yeah, a
myself.
totally different perspective on things. You know, what you said was like so valid, because, and we've talked with other artists about this sort of thing. You experienced it really early on in your career, but there's times, you know, producing, and I'd say producing art in this particular aspect, but creating in general can be difficult at times. And there's sometimes, and we've talked to, you know, very successful artists, painters, that, you know, there's days they go in the studio, and making yourself work through those moments when you just are not feeling it for whatever reason. And taking on a huge project like that is, people don't realize that's a huge thing. And it must have been scary as hell to go in there, like you said, for that month and just kind of stare at it and go, what the hell, you know, what am I going to do? And not feeling it, you know?
Well, and it wasn't just about, I was making it mean like it wasn't just about the art in front of me. It was about the rest of my life. Like, this book was like, I said that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. This sucks. I don't know. Like, what am I going to do now? It's like, I've worked really hard to get to do this. And now it's like, I don't know if I want to do it. Dang, you know? And, you know, I look back at that time and I'm like, I don't know how I did it. It's like, it's just like a survival mechanism. It's like, you know, you hear stories about people like having, you know, being out in the woods and like getting out or something. It's just like, I felt like I was in my own woods and I had to like get out, and there wasn't anybody, there was no map. There wasn't anybody telling me, all right, this is what you do to do it. It's like, you just have to eventually say, all right, this is how it's going to go. And you make a choice. Like my mom said, if you don't finish this book, your whole life's going to be about you not finishing this book. As soon as you complete it, the rest of your life opens up, but you got to finish it. Even if it's not like what you like had your heart, like, even if it's not perfect, not even if every page isn't how you know wanted it to be, you know, finish it, get it done, and then you can move on. But you can't move on until you complete it. You cannot be complete. You can't move on until you're complete.
Because you have the thing hanging over your head. Got to move forward.
And that's just like anything in life. If you're not complete about something, you're living in that, you know? And that was just a great example. And actually, even after I finished it, I wasn't complete about it. I kept on telling the story over and over. And I was creating like this future that was like, I was competing against this thing I was putting out into the world. And I'm like, at some point I just have to like, that's not making me happy. What can I say that's different than that, that's going to like create a new future for myself? It took a long time. I was competing against myself. I was sabotaging myself or competing against myself so much. Like, I got to move on from this. How can I do it? And eventually I just said, you know, I made it, you know, this is a new choice I've made. And I'm going to really make the most of it. And it took a long time, but I was lucky that I had a platform where I could really succeed and thrive and excel in the environment that I was in. And there was times that I completely floundered and I'm like, oh, do I really even want to do this? I remember, so I started working on The Simpsons June of 1996, and really I've never left the show. I've been on the show ever since. I've been a background designer, background layout. I've done a little bit of character animation, a little bit of prop design. There was a long hiatus on The Simpsons when I worked on Family Guy at the end of its first run. There was a 3-year run, and I came at the tail end of that when other artists were kind of fleeing, and I was like a prop designer for a little while, and that was fun. And then I came back to The Simpsons, and then probably, I don't know, sometime mid 2000s, I was like getting kind of sick of it. I'm like, I need to go do something else. My work wasn't getting any better. I'm like, there's just something. I'm not challenging myself. I think kind of sabotaging my work here just by thinking this is maybe not what I should be doing anymore. And it was like right at the time that the Simpsons movie was going to start getting going. And turns out that there was a huge section of the movie that happened in Alaska. And I didn't know this. And so I was like walking down the hall, I was working late, and all of a sudden the supervising director of The Simpsons, David Silverman, who was like literally one of the reasons why the show is even on the air, you know, he was a original animator for him and another guy, original animators for The Simpsons. He ended up being, you know, the first supervisor director of the show. And he was going to be the director of the movie. And he remembered me from working on a Halloween episode, Treehouse of Horror episode. I think he was directing. Maybe it was some other episode, but I'd only experienced working with him like once. But he remembered me talking to him about Alaska, and he was fascinated by Alaska. He loved the Northern Lights and stuff. Never been there, but always wanted to go. And he worked with me. He liked my work. And he said, "Hey, I want to show you something." And so he called me into his office. He actually, I think, poured me like a glass of scotch or something, which is kind of weird. That just doesn't happen. I'm like, what's going on here? And he said, "How would you like to work on the Simpsons movie? There's like a huge part of this that happens in Alaska." And I remember in that moment, my life's going to change. I literally was waiting for a moment like this to happen to like make me want to keep doing this. And so I remember like, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to seize the day. I'm going to like really impress him, you know. So they were picking the designers to work on the movie, and they were kind of picking from the TV show and outside of the show, like who's going to work on this. And I was one of the first people to be asked to work on it from my department. I actually wasn't a designer at the time. They pulled me in to do design. And, you know, I was going to be the one that was going to do a lot of the Alaska stuff on it. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. I mean, what an opportunity, you know, I've been working in television this whole time. I get to work on a feature film and draw what I know, you know. It's like on a show that I've already been working on for, you know, 10 years. Right. And he was super happy that I had all of this Alaska experience. And so I ended up getting on the movie, and not only was I on the movie and doing all this Alaska stuff, but I also took it upon myself to let the licensing and merchandising people know that I was available for any background related merchandise that was coming out at the same time as the movie. And so I literally was like working 2 full-time jobs. I designed 3 board games. I designed Clue, Sorry, and Monopoly, the editions that came out around the time of the movie. I think I was simultaneously working on the movie and a video game that was also kind of rolling out. And like right after the movie was over, I started working on Krusty Land, the Universal Studios ride. And I ended up getting hired to do that massive map that you see when you walk into the ride. It's like a 4-foot by 8-foot mural. I was the main designer of that map. There's other artists that designed parts of it, but I created basically the whole world of it, and, you know, hired other artists to help me finish it. But it was really kind of my rough vision. And then before the map was done, it was sent to all these different studios that were creating different parts of the ride, and they based the ride on what I drew. So when you go into the ride, it's like I ended up designing a lot of what you see just based on the things that I did in the map. And again, it was another one of those experiences. Like I always wanted to do a theme park map. I grew up like looking at Disney and Universal Studios and like all these different theme parks. I'm like, that'd be so cool to like actually create a world and like people look at it and they want to go there. And I got to create a map, a Krusty Land map for the Simpsons ride that was kind of like a parody of all of these other maps. So there's stuff that you look at the map and you see like, oh, there's like the Disneyland Hotel, but it's a Krusty Land Hotel, but I make it look kind of like the Disneyland Hotel. Gosh, you know, there's some roller coaster stuff in there. There's stuff that looks like the parking garages at Universal Studios. It's kind of up on a hill. So it's, you know, there was at one point I was designing it kind of more Disney-ish, and the Universal Studios people's like, you got to put more, you got to parody us a little bit more, you know? And now it's funny because, Simpsons is owned by Disney, but the ride's at Universal. So that, so for the next however many years, I think they have another 10 years on it. And then maybe the whole thing will move to Disneyland. Who knows? But again, that's, I just raised my hand and said, I'm going to be that guy that does all these things. And I end up, getting like an 8-page spread of background work for Harper's Bazaar. Like I was in like Newsweek, like all these things. It's like, so I work on one show, The Simpsons, but I pretty much fulfilled a ton of my artistic dreams all within that one property. I've gotten to do video games, theme parks, feature films, television, magazines, board games, t-shirts. My Krusty Land map is now on a t-shirt you can buy. Like my Krusty Land map is a puzzle that's like a bitch to put together. I mean, it's so funny. It's like I designed the map and it's hard for me to put together, right? I know like every inch of that thing and it's still hard, right? But it's like those things, like right when I, like the worst time of my life as an artist, like something opens up because I know there's something else. You just kind of had to be open to it. Like, okay, let it happen, believe that there's something better around the corner, and it always is. It's like, then like when I got off the movie, it's like, I wasn't a designer on the show, but I wanted to get back into design because at one point I was doing that and I like really liked it. And so my experience in the work that I did on the movie, they're like, yeah, you should just, you go into design. And then and I remember just being so dedicated to bringing, what the style and the level of work that we were doing on the movie was like a cut above the TV show. But by the time the movie came out, everybody kind of expected that the show would look like that too. And so those of us that worked on the movie kind of brought that with us to the show and just kind of upped the ante on the style. And now like you watch our TV show now, and it's as good, if not better than what you even saw in the movie. It's just like, we just keep upping the game, and we get more, we have these enormous, like unbelievable budgets. It's like no one else can do what we're doing because we're the only ones that have the money to do it. So we're lucky in that, in first time in 22 years, someone wins an Emmy for Outstanding Individual Achievement Award for the show, and it's me. Like literally like 2 or 3 years after, was it 2010? Yeah, I was back on the show for 2 or 3 more years, and I was the very first artist in the history of The Simpsons to win an Outstanding Individual Achievement Award, and the only one on the show to win 2. So there's 5 of us now that have actually won them, and it wasn't until I won that anyone thought it was actually possible. And then so the studio, like, wow, oh my God, we have to like really like promote our artists this way. And so since my win like 10 years ago, we've had 5 artists win it, and it's really made a big difference, I think, to the writers and the producers of the show to see, okay, it's not just the writing or the voice acting, it's the art too, that is, something to pay attention to. It was always, the animators kind of, oftentimes they're like kind of the low men on the totem pole. The writers and the voice actors are like kind of more the stars, and we're like more behind the scenes. We're just kind of like, they tell us what to do and we do it. But it's really not true. It's like we all bring our own artistry to the show. It's really 1/3 of the magic of the show. It's like the voices, the writing, and the art. And without one of them, the other 2 would just fail. It'd be a radio show without us.
Right.
It'd be a great radio show, but it wouldn't. It'd be just a radio show.
Right. Exactly.
A really damn good radio show, but just a radio show.
And it is a visual art. I mean, it's all visual.
And
Yeah.
And one thing that we have a friend that was really kind of the catalyst for this podcast, and his name's Bob Ragland. And Bob is very much, like, hey, figure out there. He's always pointing out little things like, hey, guess what? There's somebody that drew those illustrations for that poster, and they're making money
Yeah.
as an artist, or they're illustrating children's books, or he's really good about thinking, pointing out all these different ways that you could have an art career, and you have a
Yep.
really unique art career. I want to talk about, because a lot of people have no idea. I mean, you're just like when you watch a movie, you're not, unless you're really in the lighting or a photographer or whatever, you're not really paying
Yeah.
attention to that stuff. You're processing the story and the characters or whatever. But people, when they watch The Simpsons, they're not really thinking in those terms. But without that aspect of it, the illustration part of it, like you said, it's 1/3 of the show, and it wouldn't happen, and it wouldn't be as great as it is without that particular thing. I want to know about the specifics, because nobody knows.
Yep.
Most people don't know how animation studios work. Is there's
Mhm.
I assume that there's like a ton of people that work on The Simpsons, and there's various
Oh yeah.
departments, and each person has a
Yep.
very specific job that they're doing to make the show happen. Can you talk about the specifics of what you do?
hmm Yeah. So I've almost exclusively been a background artist on the show. And there's really two types of background artists on the show. There's a background layout artist who's an artist who basically draws all of the scene, where a team of them, I should say, draws all of the scenes, scene after scene of, what happens in the show. So like say Homer's walking across the living room and then he walks into the kitchen. That pan has to be drawn in the correct perspective for the staging of that character, and that's done by a background layout artist. But they have to know what that room looks like. So they're not designing the room, they're just drawing it based on designs that have already been done. So that was my job for the first year or two on the show. And then I got into design, which is basically drawing the environment that the layout artist would then look at and like provide all of the angles necessary for them to actually draw those scenes. And it used to be that an average episode of The Simpsons had somewhere around 350 scenes, right? And so sometimes that would be same as scenes, meaning like you jump, you would like go back and forth between two characters that are looking at each other. Well, that might be considered a scene, and then the other person overhears a scene. And so that would be a little bit of like them doing something in the same place. But The Simpsons, like, goes all over the place. They're all over the world. Even in one episode, they could be in like a ton of different locations. It's not like a feature film where you have a team of people that are like focused on just one character, or like a team of artists that are doing like one massive environment that the characters like kind of dance around in. We're drawing like just tons and tons of different scenes, and sometimes it's as simple as like looking up at the corner of the kitchen, like the ceiling. And sometimes it's like Paris, France. And so as a designer, we're generally working off a storyboard. So there's rough, small drawings of like every scene that are drawn into a storyboard. And so we have to understand what the staging of the scene is before we can design it mostly. We don't want to do a bunch of work that's like, oh, well, that's not how the character is going to be staged. You didn't even need to do that. We're basically working with the director to determine what needs to be designed, what are the priorities, what, you're reading the script, you're breaking it down. All right, well, what are all the locations that are taking place in this show? There's generally, now it's 4 acts. It used to be 3 acts, and like each act would have generally something different going on. Like Treehouse of Horror would be 3 separate stories, right? We'd have a production team that break scripts down, and then we would get priority lists, and each designer, there's background character prop designers. I've always done background design. So you're just like taking designs that have already been done and like placing them in like the specific location. But I have to do that as a designer, so the layout artist can then like draw that at all these different angles, but they don't get to decide where that stuff is going. I do, and that's based on, somebody has to make those decisions with the director, right? You can't just like have every artist decide for themselves where things are going to go. there has to be a kind of a protocol. So, once the designs are approved, then a team of artists can take those designs and draw from them and using them as kind of maps to, kind of put things where they are supposed to go based on the staging of each scene. And it's different than the illustration stuff that I've done before, because you always have to be aware there's actually characters moving around in the space that you create. So there has to be correct spatial relationships between things. It's like you have to really know perspective. You have to understand. It's like, well, this thing in the foreground, it has to be on its own separate level because a character is probably going to walk behind it. So you have to and that's the beauty of Photoshop now, because you can work in different layers, and then you can just click a layer off, or level off when you need to draw something behind it. And then even the layout artist can take your design and we have to really organize our designs in Photoshop in a way that it's user friendly for whoever gets our work. So a Photoshop file, say a background layout artist gets it, well, they have to be able to know what it is, what object it is. So you have to label it. I used to drive people nuts. I used to not organize my levels. I 267 levels, and then you'd have to literally click on each thing to know what it is. It just piss everybody off, right? And it's that's one thing. It's you have to know that's part of being an artist on the show. It's you can't do that. It's it's such a waste of time. And it's I learned my lesson, and everybody hated me. They're oh my God.
I'm only laughing because that's something that I would have done.
We hope we don't get, yeah, we hope we don't get this, guys. I mean, we love your work and everything, but man, it's we just hope we don't get your work. So I've gotten a lot better at labeling things correctly and, making my work a lot more user friendly for the next guy. Because, we all have to work together. It's not everybody on their own island,
So you're primarily working in Photoshop?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, almost exclusively. Even, it was probably 7-8 years ago that I was drawing on paper, and I was actually one of the last people. Now I do all my sketching and all of my finished work on a Cintiq, which is it's by Wacom, and it's or Wacom. I can't remember how to pronounce it, and it's basically an upright screen that you use a stylus, and you actually do the drawing right on the computer screen, and it's very much like drawing. It's actually smoother, and the great thing is you can work on layers and you can switch things off. And I remember a few years back I did this enormous 10-foot long Grand Canyon scene for an episode called Flan Canyons. It was probably one of the most expensive 5 seconds of animation ever done on The Simpsons. It was this overhead shot of this cool computer move of over the shoulders of the Simpsons family looking at the Grand Canyon for the first time in this episode. And at first they were going to build the whole thing in CG, and then they're no, let's get somebody to make it look like it's 3D. So I drew this canyon 10 separate levels that it could be multi-plane, and it could create the illusion of depth and space as the camera kind of computer camera moved around it. And it's just a killer shot. It was so cool. Took me probably 3 weeks or a month to do it. But it was it's really set the stage for the whole episode. Once you saw that, it's wow, okay, so now this is what we're getting ourselves into here. But had I had to do that in pencil, 10 feet long, and then it would be, I remember having to work on pans, on this giant light table, and and you'd have these peg bars. So, and there's these holes that you keep all the animation paper together on this peg strip, right? And, after 8 sheets of paper, you can't see, and you have the light table, you can't see through it anymore, and if you draw it wrong, you have to erase it or throw it away. That's the great thing about Photoshop is you just click, just delete it or click it off. And it's so much, and you can have this enormous file and work on all of it just on your little screen. You just move the little hand over a little bit, and then you got another whole, couple feet that, you can zoom in or zoom out, and you can see 10 feet in just like a 6-inch, span, and see the whole thing, that you could never see all of it at once if you're drawing that way, on a light table and with a pencil and paper. But I'll tell you, I was like a total dinosaur that didn't want to move on. I'm like, oh, pencil is like, I was a total, snob. I'm like, nah, computers. You can never achieve what you can achieve in pencil on the computer. And then, like, of course, it's totally not true. But it just took me a while, like it always does.
I would have thought Illustrator would have been the program you'd have used instead of Photoshop.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Well, Illustrator. The prop designers use Illustrator a lot for like vectorizing things.
Mm-hmm.
For more like really specific, really refined type stuff. But Photoshop is really good for kind of more loose, design that's a little bit more like, just freehand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, actually, I actually don't even know. I've not really used Illustrator a lot after Photoshop just seemed to be the program that everybody was using for this.
Yeah.
So.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Because I was with you, Wes. I thought for sure it'd all be done in Illustrator. So I was surprised to hear that you were utilizing Photoshop. So
no, now that somebody says, "Oh, can you do this in Illustrator?" I'm like, "Oh well, no, that guy can over there though." That's a great thing too about working on a show. It's like there's always like you don't like anything you're not good at. There's somebody else that's gonna be. It's like, oh, get that guy over there to do it. It's, you don't have to be good at everything. You could, that's a great thing. It's like there are people on the show who are really kind of jack of all trades, and some are masters at some of those things too. I would say I'm more of a master of one. Like I've gotten really good at the one thing, and with this other project that I'm working on, my own show, it's like I'm just really good at getting other people to do what I'm not good at.
That's
how to learn how to do that. It's like begin learning the craft of things that as a creator, you really have to know to have the creative control of your work. You have to know how to write. And I realized it's like, there's no way I can create a show and like just count on somebody else to write it. It's like, why do it? I need to at least be able to go in and like know enough to like hold the vision and have the respect of writers and other people who are involved in the creation of the show, have their respect. So when I talk, they're like, okay, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. Not like some guy that like has this really cool idea, but can't really take it much further than just the idea. And that's just like, all right, well, but I don't have to know how to storyboard. I mean, it would be great if I could, but I've got great people that I can work with that I can just say, hey, I really I want this scene to do this. And then, yeah, they do it, Yeah, I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I was a better character guy. I could just sit here and do all this stuff myself. But, you can't do everything. You don't have time. It's like, I want to write. Somebody, God, what was it? Maybe a year or two ago, somebody asked me if I had gotten so into writing, like, man, if I had a choice right now between drawing and writing, I would choose writing. It just is like, wow, I can't believe I love it that much, but it's a whole different way of creating that I'm glad I know how to do both. It's like, it's really cool to like be able to actually have a vision and create a lot of it on your own with the skill that, I've developed over time now, and be surrounded by everything that you ever want is like within your, reach, get what you want done. Like in terms of animations, like, I just have an enormous, resources here,
How long does it take to create an episode of like The Simpsons from the beginning, from creation to fruition?
About a year, actually.
About a year. Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And that's not like, it's not like, several episodes are happening at once. It's like, how it actually starts is the writers have the retreat where they basically pitch ideas in a hotel. Like I think they do this every year. They like all the writers, like there's just like 30 of them. They rent out like hotel rooms for a couple of days. Then James L. Brooks, Matt Groening, and a couple of the top producers from the show basically hear all the pitches of all the writers. And then they basically come up with a season based on, what shows that they pick from those writers and shows that they wanted to do. Like, Matt Groening might have an idea. James L. Brooks might have an idea. One of the other producers might have an idea, and they said, well, we want an episode that's like this. Like we want a show about like this. But then the writer will be assigned to it, and then they'll put their own kind of spin on it. And then there's a writer's room. So all the writers, a lot of the writers like have to be in the room every day, but there's like one day where like, I think it's Wednesdays where like everybody's in the writer's room and they're contributing. And so it's not like one writer writes the whole episode by themselves and no one else is involved. It's like a whole team of people is like cutting your thing up and like dissecting it. And like, sometimes it's like just an outline or an idea that you brought is all that's left. And like so many people have had their hands on it. But it's like that process that has to happen before we as the animators ever see it. So the scripts will come in and they'll have several scripts done before we see, I think, any of them. And then scripts will come in and then we'll start working on the first one. The director will get it. They'll have their team of storyboard artists to like roughly board it out, break the script down, board it out. And then they'll go through that process for a little while, and then design will get on board, generally character design first, because, the characters have to be, animated beforehand. Sometimes the background design will happen a little bit later. As long as the staging, the board artist is generally responsible for like rough staging. So they have to kind of know what the background's going to look like. And sometimes there's some elements of design in there. But it really isn't until like the design department gets it where really specific things are done. From there, background, prop, and characters are done. And then kind of simultaneously, storyboards are then revised and refined. And then all of that is then sent to a team of character and background layout artists that basically produce every scene. With those artists come people who are timing. So there's basically they have these guys that like basically time everything, so like the movements and how things are moving, and basically writing notes as to like, okay, in this amount of time the arm has to move like this, and there'll be like little sketches on the paper. And then there's checkers who I don't even know what they do. I can't think of what they do. But they're like checking stuff, Who
are you and what do you do? I don't know you.
There's a guy who just does there's one guy that just does lip syncing. So like when you hear the voice, he assigns the mouth movement for each each sound, right? And there's a specific, code system. Like there's like, there's I don't know how many, maybe 18 or 20 different mouth movements, for each main character at least. And they're numbered, right? And so he just goes through and like, there's an actual job, right? Lip sync guy, right? Like it's like you watch The Simpsons, you're like, you never think, I wonder who like decides how the mouth is going to move that one time. Who does that? You think it's like the animator doing all that. No, it's the animator might do like one pose of it, but the animators on The Simpsons aren't doing like full animation. They're doing key frames. And then those frames are sent overseas, and we have a whole studio in Korea that does the in-betweens. But then there's a guy, Robin, on our show that like basically assigns lip syncing to every thing. It's like it's his whole job. He's had it for years. That's his job, and he's probably gotten really good at it. Over time. And so we in the animation studio will have the episode for several months, and then once it's complete, we'll start shipping, and we'll have several weeks of shipping where the work is then sent in tiers over to Korea, and they'll start working on like say the first act or whatever. And then they'll do their part and start sending it back. and then we'll have about another month of retakes and any like last minute rewrites. And literally, stuff can be changed like just days before airtime.
Wow.
Sometimes. But all of that's built into the schedule. So if like, something happens in Korea that, wasn't what we had in mind, or, something big about the episode be so much better if we put this in now because something in the world changed, and we could get this in if we just spent some money at the retake time. Like I remember we had to like, everybody thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and this wasn't with Trump either. This is with Obama, So it's like, this is like they thought she was going to win both times. So like we had to rewrite jokes, like because we just thought, oh, for sure, she was going to win, or this is going to be her, this is going to be the competition, and so we kind of the writers kind of wrote it like the most likely scenario would be this, so they write it like that, and then they had to like rewrite it before it went on the air to like reflect the new reality, right?
Wow.
It's funny, it's like lately, especially because of the Simpsons predicting Trump becoming president 16 years ago, there's been a lot of things that the Simpsons has kind of predicted, and it's funny because it's like I think the writers just think it would be funny if that happened, or like, wouldn't that be crazy? And then like crazy things just happen. It's not like we predicted them. It was more like, it's just a crazy, it's funny because it's so, I think it's just the way that humor works. It's like, if you're thinking smartly, like what's the craziest like scenario you can come up with? And then reality is just like, that's happening in real life, now. It's like, you can't write this stuff that's going on now. It's just, the world is just crazy.
So you got to be careful what you think is going to happen, because I think it's like self-actualization.
I really, that it's a scary thing going to work and like realizing what I just did might like change the future.
Right. Yeah, I think it's true.
I actually drew the scene where Trump announces that he's going to be president on The Simpsons, and I kid you not, it is the exact scene, exactly how we did it.
See,
none of us knew. Like,
if you would have drew that, it would have never happened. We'd have a different president.
I know, right?
Ponder that.
Please don't put that on me.
I won't. I'm not. I'm just kidding.
No, but it's interesting because knowing Trump, it's like, of course he's going to announce his presidency in his own hotel,
exactly,
at the top of like this amazing like escalator. Of course, that's where he's going to do it. That's why it was written that way, because you just you can predict exactly, for some people like him, he just like has a certain way he acts. It's like you can nail it almost every time exactly how he's going to do something. That's what made it so funny back then, and what makes it so damn true now.
That's his favorite scene in The Simpsons, by the way.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
I never thought
he became
of that.
a fan of the show. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
that's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And then to be able to put, personal stuff in there has been a really fun thing. And seeing, having things come off the Simpsons that I've actually like gotten to use for my own life and, put in there.
Just tell us a little bit about that, Charlie.
Yeah. So as much as I could, like anytime there was anything like had a northern theme or like something I could put in from my hometown, like our hometown Fairbanks, I would try to do it. And every once in a while there'd be an opportunity where I wasn't like taking away from the story of The Simpsons or trying to insert something that shouldn't be there. It just worked to have like the personality of a particular building or location like be that model for that. So there's an episode called Take My Wife's Sleeves, and it was like a biker episode. And so I had to design a biker bar called Papa Wheelies. And so I used the old Howling Dog Saloon in Fox, Alaska, outside of Fairbanks, as the model for Papa Wheelies. And it totally worked. It was like the perfect, biker bar looking, place. And I actually had like, it was kind of this obscure thing, but it kind of looked like a weird looking chandelier in the biker bar, but it's actually a pipe from the pipeline that's like hanging inside of, and it just looked funny. I put it in there and it's like, no one even is like, what is that? It's like and there were like bras hanging off of it, which is like, so like biker barish. But that's like, you go into the Howling Dog Saloon and there's actually that actually is in there, and I had like a band stage that was like in the corner and I had the chairs, the bar stools actually had like hearts carved in the backs of them at the top. I think that they had those at the Howling Dog Saloon, and I just put them in because it was just so funny, like having these like hearts on a chair in the biker bar. So like little details like that I throw in, and then I don't know if you were downhill skier at all, Todd, but Alyeska, where I used to go skiing outside of Anchorage, there was another episode called Little Big Mom, and the resort in the episode where it's like opens up and they're like, the resort name is Mount Embolism. I based Mount Embolism, the resort, on Alyeska. So some of the, I didn't actually do those drawings, but I brought the pictures in. I'm like, oh, I think that the resort could look kind of like this. And then in that same episode, my friend Kevin, who's one of the character designers, needed a reference for a chairlift operator. I'm like, oh, I can find some. And he looked at me. He's like, no, you look like a chairlift operator. And so he made me a chairlift operator. So I'm actually in the show as a chairlift operator, and I think one of the only people ever to work on the show that they did a likeness of. And then there was a speaking part. I didn't do the acting for it, but it was like, I said like a couple things, or my character said a couple things, but it wasn't me. It was just my likeness. But it's like, to this day, it was one of the like greatest, moments of my career, to be an actual character on The Simpsons. No one knows it. It's me, except unless I tell them, but it's,
that's awesome.
Super cool. And I actually get to see myself having hair, which is great. I like it in it, like The Simpsons is eternally going to show me as someone that has hair. So that's always a good thing.
Wow, man. That's awesome.
That's crazy.
Yeah. For a while, like, the animators and the character designers would put people in there. And I think Matt Groening started kind of catching on, and he didn't like it because the crowds started looking to like specific people instead of like generic people. So it kind of worked for me because I was an actual character. It was supposed to look like a chairlift operator, and it had to be like kind of a specific looking person. So I don't think he would have objected to that unless they put my name on the jacket or something like that, but they didn't. They weren't quite that, brazen. But he started kind of putting the kibosh on because, of course, it's like if you're an animator and you can get your buddies in the show, like, why not?
Exactly.
It'd be awesome. And there's several of us that have gotten in. Sometimes people are drawn in really funny ways that they didn't ask to be drawn in, that they'll like kind of people like get each other back, by putting them in. But, I think that we kind of, first of all, we don't have time to do that. Like somehow we've all gotten busier or something, or maybe we're just older and more professional now. Who knows? Because we all started when we were like right out of college or not. Yeah. So it's like the show is like everybody's like, people ask me sometimes, what's the average age of an artist on The Simpsons? I said, a year older every year, because like no one leaves. Everybody just like gets older and stays. Like, why not? It's a great show,
right?
So It's like we're all like 50s and 40s and 60s or whatever. When we started, like the oldest person on the show was like 40. That was old. Now it's like the average age is like 50.
That's funny.
Yeah, it seems like it anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
it makes sense. I mean, when it became popular and that group of people that were getting into animation, that
and there weren't that many people that were there's very few people who experienced. Most of the people that got on the show is like the first thing they ever did. Like I was one of the only people that had much experience doing their own work before getting on the show. But a lot of people, like, some of them were plucked out of art school before they even finished because there's such a demand. And now it's a much more competitive field. I got in during like this Renaissance, like golden age, when it was really, if you had any kind of talent, you're pretty much could probably get a job, and everybody was helping each other out. It's like, I remember being at this professional drawing school to kind of like have you bone up on skill sets that you needed to get into animation. Like right when I got to LA, and I got my job, and within three or 4 months, I helped 3 other people get a job on The Simpsons. It's like, you could never do that now. I don't think, 3 new people may get hired in an entire year.
Wow.
On The Simpsons now. It's very difficult to get on it.
So it's such a complex thing to produce an episode of The Simpsons. There's so many people in the mix. Do you know roughly how many people like work in the animation department?
There used to be more. Actually streamlined it, where they took several animators out and they kind of made the storyboard department bigger, and so you were doing a lot more of the, you're basically, once you could do everything on digitally, and you had like Storyboard Pro, it's like you started making these, like immediately you were starting to make little films to see if the animation would work as a joke earlier on, before like spending all this time in the animatic process, which is like basically a pencil test of the entire episode. Which could, I think it's like an 8-week process to get one of those done. Whereas now you could work in Storyboard Pro and you can see, is this joke going to work within like a couple of days of like noodling it and like repeating it and kind of a thumbnail back and forth, So there's probably less people in the process and that are, I think they cut something like 30% of the animators once, and they just kind of beefed up the storyboard, and they have the animators on, now being kind of really like the boards become more refined, So I think there's probably around 125 artists in our studio, something like that, and probably another 50 support crew. It used to be probably over 200, and then there's well over 200 artists in Korea. It used to be also that every scene was a cell that was painted like on acetate. So it was like 25 to 30,000 cells of animation per episode, each one hand painted by an artist, hundreds of artists. Yeah. Now it's all done in Photoshop. You still have to do all that work, but it's like point and click now, instead of like painting behind a piece of acetate and like every different colors like gouache. Yeah, it's much more streamlined as technology has improved, and I think that it's probably taken some jobs away, or just added them in different areas. Yeah,
sure.
So
it's amazing that many people. You just don't think about it. You're watching Simpsons and there's all these hands in the mix to make it that one episode.
Yeah, and it used to be, as a designer, I could do 5 to 10 designs a week. Now I do 2 or 3 because of the how much more complex it is, and how much the higher expectations. The drawings I'm doing now are so much more detailed and so much more researched and like observational detail. You're not just like making stuff up so much. You're really looking at more at reality. It's just an expectation that the world has become a lot more sophisticated looking than it used to, where we used to call the trees like lollipop trees, because it was just like a round green spot on a stick. That's what trees used to look like on The Simpsons, or used to, at least some people drew them that way. Now it's like we draw trees the way they actually look, with like, winding, trunks and branches kind of curving up, and like, different branches coming off of there. And like when you see a tree, it's like, some branches are hidden by, bunches of leaves, and like some of the leaves, bunches of leaves are coming off a little branch at the end. And it's like, it's more random. There's not as much of a formula to it, So when you watch The Simpsons, and now you can see it's like each individual tree looks different than the rest. We get in trouble if we're like cutting and pasting objects and like moving around. Matt Groening's like, he looks at every single design, he like knows exactly like if people are doing that or not. We get notes on that stuff, and he's still involved in the show so much that he looks at every single thing that we do.
Wow.
In fact, I have a story I actually got to tell him at the Emmys a few years ago. He had won for Futurama that year, and I had brought my niece to the awards that year, and we got locked out of the Emmys because we took a break and walked out of the lobby, and we didn't realize you can't get back in. Well, Matt and his crew, the writing crew, had already won their Emmys, so they're like out of there. And so they go to Wolfgang Puck's and are like in this private little seating area, like waiting for the governor's ball to happen. And I walk over to him and I'm like, hey, how are you? So how many Emmys is that for you? I said, well, 12, but who's counting? And I'm like, okay, cool. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, we got locked out. So we're just waiting for the governor's ball, which is going to be another hour, so he's like, well, come over. So I brought and we like literally sitting right next to Matt Groening, which is not a normal thing to happen. Now, even though I've worked on his show for this many years, very few people actually interact with him like this. So, but he knew me specifically from, things that I'd done, apart from just the television show. So we've had some rapport. We went over and sat next to him, and it just got into this kind of round table discussion as to like each person's first experience working with Matt Groening. Like, what was it? And a lot of people were like intimidating, or like, this is what happened, or like they were nervous, or something bad happened, or like, I don't know. But my first experience of him, like when I got into design, the very first thing I did that he had a note on was that I drew the world's largest pile of manure from the world's smallest donkey. And it was in a show called Bart Carney. And it was just like, that's what it was. I had to like literally draw a pile of manure, and it had to like really like I had to really sell it. Right. And it was funny because it was bigger than the horse. It was like freaking huge. It was like twice as, and I like really played it up. And can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So he's like, man, you draw really good shit. And then I actually got to tell him that, and he like cracked up. He didn't remember himself doing that, but he's like, that's such a great story. That's such a great story. And it's like, I don't even know if I have that note anymore, but it was like so classic. I've had some really kind of nasty notes from him. Every one of us has gotten some that like, he's just having a bad day. And he's to me a great, I like him. He's a good guy, but everybody, when he's not getting what he wants and he keeps seeing what he doesn't want to see, anyone would be pissed. And, there was a run where he was just not seeing and I was kind of one of those guys that was not showing him what he wanted to see. But that was like, just like, I kind of went to heaven a little bit in that scenario. Like, wow, I got like Matt Groening telling me I drew really good shit, and it was actually shit, and it was really good. It was really good shit.
Oh man.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, I who knew that would be like something I get good at, is drawing shit,
Let me ask you about your Emmys, because I think that's really cool and impressive. How do you get nominated for an Emmy? What is that process? Does the studio, they have these different categories, and the studio says, hey, we want to nominate you for this, or how does that work?
So it's called Outstanding Individual Achievement in Animation. So there's a peer group for each department of television. So animation is one of, I think, 27 peer groups in the Television Academy. And when I was first selected to be put forward for an Emmy, the management had changed, and the new executive producer for animation like took it upon himself to like really start promoting the artists. I think he had worked on other projects that, you know, it was something that he was knew about and made important. The producers before him really weren't doing that, you know. So there was a section of the designs that I did for an episode where Barton Millhouse found an old abandoned subway, and they had this like subway car that they were in. It was like from the like 1930s. And so I basically designed a whole act of like subway tunnels and stuff. And it was like really intricate, and I got super into it. And I like researched, you know, abandoned subways from like the 1930s in New York, right? I got this whole book, and I like, you know, these Art Deco murals of like Springfield, like put down there, and like these kind of old looking maps, and like this dilapidated brick, and like all these pipes. And, you know, I just got really into it. The director's like, yeah, just go to town, like make this. I mean, there's going to be a lot of animation going on. So, and you could easily like make that look boring if you don't pay attention, you know. He's like, no, this has got to be like a really cool world down there. Like they just discovered this cool, like new world that no one knew existed below Springfield. And so I got really into this, and more so than I almost ever had been given the opportunity to, you know, do. I was kind of like working on the movie where you have like a lot of time to do like one thing. And he really wanted me to go to town on this. So, you know, I spent a lot of time on this thing, and then when it came to like the studio putting artists forward, I think I was the only one that they picked. They used that section from that show to put forward. And, you know, I think I was sick, and I got a call from somebody at the studio saying, yeah, I just wanted to let you know that they're putting your work forward in consideration for an Emmy. And I was just like, what? No way, really? And I hadn't even really heard about it before, because I don't think I ever was a part of the studio. I didn't know that the studio did that. This is kind of a new thing. And then, gosh, when was it? So I called the director like from home, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. I can't believe you're putting me forward. It's so cool. He said, well, you just, you know, you're in the race. You haven't won, you know, you're just in the race. So I'm like, I know, but I'm in the race, you know, wow. But I kind of forgot about it, because I'm like, yeah, you know, Simpsons don't win these types of things. It's like other like Disney shows, or like these like really amazing looking shows win this stuff. And so I kind of forgot about it. And several months later, I get a phone call at my desk at work, and it's this guy, Sean Cashman, who used to direct on The Simpsons. He was the governor for the animation peer group for the Television Academy. And he's calling me kind of out of the blue, but I didn't know he was like the governor of the, you know, the animation part of the Academy. So I thought he was like calling me to see if I wanted to work on another show or something. Like I thought he was like offering me another job or something. And he said, I'm just calling you to say that you won an Emmy. And I heard this, and I was sitting at my desk, and I'm like, are you, what? Did I hear you right? It's like, is this even possible? Because no one on The Simpsons has ever like won an Emmy like this. I mean, the show had won, and, you know, so several people I knew had statues, but they all won as a team on, you know, for the show. And then there's maybe the voice actors would on an individual basis had won over time, but no artist had won an individual achievement award for the show. And this is like 22 years into the show. And I was just like walked around kind of in a daze. It's like, what? You know, it's just like night and day. Like, it's just a strange thing. And I was like walking around saying, I just won an Emmy. Is that right? Did I hear that? You know, is that right? That I just heard that? And then it became weird because, you know, I was an individual artist on a team of artists to create this thing. So it was cool that the studio thought that I deserved to be put forward, and the Academy thought that my work was Emmy worthy. But then there was this other part. It's like, yeah, and I'm an artist among many, many artists that make this show what it is. And so there's always this thing like, well, I kind of feel like it should be a team. Like if we're going to win, we should win as a department, you know. But the Emmys don't do it that way. Now the Annies, which is an award specifically for animation, I think they do award, you know, for teams. And I've been nominated twice for on a team, like a production design team. But for the Emmys, it's an individual achievement award. So they'll find artists that have specific, like kind of above and beyond. They've done, you know, certain things, and they're awarding that kind of, you know, achievement. What they do, and I learned this after the fact because I then joined the Academy. Here's the thing: is you win an Emmy, they only give you one ticket to the Emmys. You have to become a member to get the other ticket. So that's how they get you to become a member. You know, so and it worked. Like it's like, of course, you're not going to go by yourself to you know, get up on stage to you know, show that you won an Emmy. Oh, by the way, it's a juried award, so I knew several weeks before it wasn't like I showed up to the Emmys and were waiting to see if I won or not. It was one of only 2 or 3 juried awards. So there's a jury of my peers that actually awarded me. And it was like a group of 12 professional artists in animation that looked at a body of work of several different people, and by unanimous decision chose me and however many other people to win an Emmy. Now, for winning an individual achievement award in animation, it can be more than one person, or it could be no one. If they didn't feel like anyone deserved it. But my year, I think 3 people won Emmys for background design, and then 9 individual achievement Emmys overall for the entire industry. And so I was one of those 9. And then I think 4 years later, when I won my second one, there was like 6 or 7 of us. And they kind of tightened it, like where the Academy really only wanted one person to win for each subsection of animation. So they just made it, I think, a little tougher. So fewer people won it, but yeah, that's kind of how it works. And I was really interested in seeing how it worked. And then I almost every year now I do judging. So worked for me because now I know it's like I could go in there and see exactly like what the jury is looking for, what impresses them, like how the presentations are. So the first time the studio put my work together to be put forward for the Emmy, the second time I'm like, I'll do it myself because I know exactly what to do to make a good showing. And I knew that the studio wasn't going to put the time in that I was going to like really make it what I wanted it to be. And so the second time I won for it's interesting. Also a group of designs from the 1930s. This time it was like from a circus. So I designed like a whole act of a Treehouse of Horror episode where the family are stars in a freak. It was called Freak. Freaks No Geeks was the name of the act, and it was based on the movie Freaks from the 1932, and all these kind of black and white, kind of strange characters in the freak family in the circus, right? And so I got to draw like their living quarters, the wagon, like where they ate, kind of this whole lay of the land. And it was like cool because you could like for like a couple months you just like have this one huge thing you're working on, and that's pretty much what you're doing. And it's 8 minutes of animation, which is a lot of time if you think about it. Like how much could go on in 8 minutes?
Oh my God! Yes.
And it all takes place. Yeah, it was like, I don't know, probably 40 designs I did, something like that.
Wow, man.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, every once in a while, maybe once a year, I have an opportunity to like really get into like a whole big group of designs instead of like 1 or 2 here and there.
Has the Emmys, these Emmys that you've won, have they helped you in trying to work with your shop your new project around and
Oh yeah it really helps to say that you're an Emmy winning artist from The Simpsons. Like that, to say you're from The Simpsons is awesome, but you get to put 2-time Emmy winning artist from The Simpsons. It's like, it just kind of ups the ante in terms of like how, like, oh yeah, I remember like even trying to get an attorney, like an entertainment attorney. Like I literally like went kind of shopping for attorneys, right? And I called one attorney, and then before I hung up the phone from the one attorney, I said, "Oh, I'm going to call this other attorney over here." And then there was like this like war about who was going to like get to like represent me, because they could kind of see like, okay, well, this guy's serious. It's like whether his project goes or not, it's like he's going to be, spending some, like we're going to make some money off of this guy. He's serious. He's not going to be like, 2-time Emmy award winning artist from The Simpsons is probably going to be serious about doing something. Right. So I ended up getting Matt Groening's attorney. Like Matt Groening's, I share an attorney with Matt Groening. And even that is like, oh my God, like people are like, what? you have her? And it's like a lot of people like don't want to even. It's funny. One writer from The Simpsons said that no one from The Simpsons will ever get to work with me because the attorney's so tough that of course I'll get what I want, but they're over there, they're going to suffer. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. But of course you want somebody that will fight for you on your side too. But anyway, no, I think that when I reach out to like voice actors to like get them on like cast, like get them part of what I'm doing, or even like, right now I have a former writer from The Simpsons who was a head writer for David Letterman. I think he show ran Parks and Rec for a while, worked on like New Girl. He worked on Silicon Valley for a time. He created the show Little Bush for Comedy Central. He just came out with I don't know if you saw it, there was a documentary on Netflix that just came out called Have a Good Trip.
Oh yeah.
Adventures in Psychedelics.
Yeah.
He wrote and directed that. Well, he's now really interested in my project and wants to bring it to series. And we shopped it to Comedy Central. They turned it down, but his deal with Comedy Central is going to be up, pretty soon, and we may end up, going somewhere else with it. But attracting someone like him, because I'm not a seasoned writer. That's not my mainstay. I would need to get someone who's had like experience running a show or selling a show. That just makes, the package of qualifications and credibility, just become more attractive. And so I'm essentially leveraging whatever I can of my own in attracting people to what I'm doing. And so that definitely helps. It didn't help me get a raise. I'm not like an actor. I'm not like an actor that like it automatic. If you win an Emmy, you automatically are in another like pay level. It's like it didn't really work out that way for me. But I'm using it in other ways. I'm using it like, for the end of time, I'm an Emmy award winning artist.
Yeah.
That forever, whether no matter what I do from here on out, I'll always have that.
Yeah, it has cachet, man. It's like not everybody can say that. And and from what I know, and from what the couple people that we've talked to that work in Hollywood, and it's not an easy business. So whatever leverage you can utilize to your advantage, it is,
Yeah, it's still not easy. I mean, I'll have to say it's like I can get my foot in the door pretty much anywhere, but like to keep the door open and not getting kicked out to the other side is a whole nother, it's a whole nother thing. It's like, and so I've literally, a lot of people will like come up with tons of ideas and like pitch all of the time. Hopefully like one of them will hit. And I'm kind of more like, Matthew Weiner from Mad Men, who like just put all his eggs in one basket and like shopped that thing until somebody picked it up, and he just kept on working it. Hopefully the one thing I've been putting my heart and soul into, and it's changed. I've probably written the pilot 10 different ways, and it's been, the name of the show has been like 3 or 4 different things. The main character's name is different. Like the whole premise, other than it, taking place partially, where we grew up, and partially in LA, it's like most of the rest of it has changed. Events in my own personal life that have happened like has impacted the premise. So, and I think it's gotten so much better. It's so much richer. There's just a lot more dimension to it. It's not just like one idea, and just there's just a lot going on with it. And I feel like taking the time that I have and like developing this on the front end before I like really get into a room with a bunch of other people. I've had a lot of people help me on it, but I've never like given control of it up to anyone. And I am now at the point where I could sell it and feel really comfortable that I know exactly what it is I want to do. I can get in there. I can hold the vision of it, while I'm working with a team of people to make it happen. For a long time, I didn't feel that way. I felt like if I sell this, it's going to end up being something that I didn't have in mind. I didn't know enough about it, that I needed to pull back, like just work on it, get it crafted the way I want it to be crafted, and then take it out again. And so, I'll pitch it around for a little bit, then take it back, work on it, pitch it around again in another iteration, take it back if nothing happens. And now I feel like over time I've also built a team of people that are like dedicated to it, so they're on board if it goes. So I have a cast. I'm now creating a one sheet, which is basically a short little advertisement as to what the show is all about, like with some visuals and with some writing. And I'm looking at attracting, well-known comedian to play the lead role, and, some top voice actors, actors out there. And I think with that, the one sheet that I'm working on and the people I have on board and my own credibility, I think it's going to be a good package to get out there and have people get attracted to.
How long have you been out there pitching this?
Started writing in 2014, and I kind of came out of I helped these 2 writers get a meeting to pitch their show at Film Roma, which is the animation studio that The Simpsons was being produced by at the time. And they invited me to be in the meeting, and I was in this meeting, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm at home. Like people just like riffing on ideas and like coming up with something new and fresh that's never been done before. And like, it's just like the process of creation. Like I'd been working on somebody else's idea for all this time. And it's like, I felt like, I do my own work, but it's like, it's all these like small visions of like small projects. Like I was just so attracted to the idea of coming up with a premise and creating a whole world around it and exploring it over time. That's one thing I really am fascinated about The Simpsons is the world that's been created. It's this incredibly vast world. It's like almost as big as the world that we exist in. It's like in animation, it's like the equivalent. It's just this enormous place that's just seems to never end. The possibilities of it. I'm like, wow, if I could create some kind of idea and build a world around that like is endlessly funny and topical, and also based on my own personal experience, that would be amazing. And within 2 weeks of that meeting, I remember coming up with the initial premise of the show. It's not really like what it is anymore, but the basic humor and the core nuclear family is somewhat the same, and at least the personalities of them. And now so much has changed since then, but for a while, there'd be maybe 6 months where I would put it away and do something else, and then it would I'd come back to it and be like, oh my God, that sucked. Why did I do it that way? And then there was a time when I would try to get a celebrity involved, and there would become a saga around that. Then they would want the show to be about them, and I'm like, no, it's not about you. And I'd have to get more confidence around that. Now, just because the celebrity wants it their way doesn't mean that you should do it that way because of them. It's like, you got to remember, this is your vision, this is your show, and either they're going to help it or hurt it, and this person probably would have hurt it. It would have been their deal and it wouldn't have been my show. And I don't want to, I'm not doing this to work for somebody else's vision. It's like, I'm not, I already do that. It's like, I already got really good at that. I'm doing this to keep my vision alive and have other people get on board with that. So it taught me a lot about just sticking up for, what it is that I want to achieve, and just becoming more bold about it, and then people get attracted to that. Like when you're like really into something and you just keep doing it, and like over time people see that you're keeping doing it. Like for a while, people are like, "Oh, I'm glad you're still doing that." I'm like, "What do you mean still doing that?" It's like, of course, why wouldn't I? But that's not what people's, how it is. It's like, people be like, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," and then they're not writing it anymore. Or like, that was just an idea for the week. Right. I'm like, I wanted this to be so fun that there's no way I would ever not want to do it. So I basically, like I said earlier, that I wanted to create something that would be something I could, like, every passion that I have, I could fulfill in some way on this project. So I wrote a theme song for it. I've written episodes for it. I've designed characters for it. I've done backgrounds for it. I've voice acted it in it. All these things that I have always wanted to do. It's like, I even had there's a top voice actor who I'm friends with in Hollywood here. He's done so many different things. And I asked him like one time, well, how do you break into voice acting? It's like, I've always wanted to be a voice actor. People say I have a good voice or whatever. And he's like, for you, create your own show and put yourself in it. And he's like, guaranteed that'll be easier for you to do than just being a voice actor. It's like, you already have a great job in animation. Why would you want to give that up? Why don't you create your own show and put yourself in it? Get this, like a couple of years ago, I actually auditioned him for my show, and there was another guy that was better than him, and I cast him instead of him. Oh, and he said to me, he's like, I love it that actually I'm trying out to be on your show and I didn't get the part. But he's like, I only loved it because the guy who got the part was better for it than I am, and I love him. But
that's awesome.
That's just like, I can't, at this point, it's like I see like these amazing, like talented, famous voice actors that I have someone who helps me get them all and audition anybody I want, anytime I want. Whether they're going to be in the show or not is anybody's guess, because it all changes when somebody, a network buys it and they get their say. And like, if there's a star, they get their say. But it's just the kind of the practice and the experience of like kind of creating as if it's happening. Like, just do it as if I already have. It's like I'm operating like this show's on the air and I'm creating it for air, instead of like, oh, one day I hope, it feels like it's a job and I'm just doing it as a profession, which is what I'm doing. So, God, it's 11 o'clock. My daughter's just coming in like,
yeah, she gave that look, that kid look that they give it to their parents when they've been talking for a long time and they want to go home or whatever. Yeah. She was like, come on, really? You're still talking?
Yeah, that might be a sign that one of us has to say goodnight.
That was classic, man. So let me ask you this: what do your kids think about their Emmy award-winning dad and the job that he has? Do they think that's just really cool?
Well, one of the things they said is, Dad, I'm glad you have two, so we don't have to fight over the one when you die. That's what they care about. Like, who gets it when I'm gone? That's like they're thinking way into the future.
Oh
right?
My God. That's hilarious.
No, they think it's cool. Like, I actually, like one of my speeches, I actually said both. I made it a point to say both of their names on national television so they could hear it and they could always see that. I kid you not, I almost forgot their names. Literally, I was like so nervous. I'm like, there was like a second pause. I'm like, and my creative spirits, Teddy and Katie. I'm like, oh my God, that would be like, and I would have like joked like, you know what? I'm at work so much I forgot what my kids' names are. I would have had to follow up with some joke like that. But no, they think it's cool. Like, you know, and like something like this, it's like I actually don't do that many interviews, so they think it's cool that I'm doing this, except that now it's like I think we're 3 hours in and they probably want, you know, some attention.
They want dad time.
Yeah, if they're not already asleep, which obviously they're not. So yeah, it's been a fun ride, I have to say. It's been I could not have predicted the career and all the things that have happened since you know, when I first got here. It's just, you know, been quite a ride.
So this project that you're pitching, we'll wrap this up real quick. This project that you're pitching, is it out there at all?
No,
like,
not really. Just, I mean,
no.
People that I've worked with know a little bit about it. Some studios know about it. But you know, there's some people that are helping me. It's still, you know, it's in the development phase, as in like I'm developing it to get it ready to pitch. So I'm like, it's like now getting ready to like take it out there again. And this is going to be the most serious round where I'm like, you know, this is the round that I think that, you know, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, you know, now.
Well, good luck, man.
Thank you.
I hope things go well.
Thank you.
Being an animator sounds like it's a really fun occupation, a great career. Is it a fairly lucrative career path working in Hollywood as an animator, or is it just like any other job where, you know, there's different tiers that you have to work through?
I mean, I say I'm kind of like paid like a mid-level professional. Like we're in the six figures, you know. It's not like I'm not wealthy by any means, but you know, living in LA, it's like I have a comfortable life and my wife makes more than I do, so that's always good. You know, but you really don't start making, you know, a lot of money until, you know, you've either sold something and you're making, you know, multiple streams of income, or, you know, you're a high paid writer. You know, a seasoned writer can make, you know, several $1,000s a week, you know, or more. Yeah, I mean, I'm paid well for what I do. I find it, I feel like I'm very fortunate that I get to do what I love, and it can be challenging, but it's also, you know, a job I've been doing a long time, and I've gotten good at it, and it's not as hard as it used to be. And I'm able to do, you know, I feel like I have the energy and the, you know, the passion to keep doing my own stuff outside of work, and work just kind of fuels it and helps me, you know, with it. And certainly the resources and the network of friends and so forth who I've you know, kind of gained through the years has like really helped me to be able to, you know, do the project I'm working on now. It's like, I don't know, it would be really hard to do what I'm doing without the experience that I had. You know, I mean, I've walked so easily into so many different, you know, places with, you know, saying, you know, I'm this guy that's done this. And I've also like writing, and, you know, that just comes with like experience, and like, yeah, I've been doing this a long time. I want to try something new. Like, I'm not trying to make it anymore. I feel like I'm making it on a different level, you know. I think, you know, winning a couple Emmys and being on a hit show for a long time is just like, yeah, I feel really good that I did that. And now I have the freedom to like, it's like, I did that. I don't need to do that now. Like now I'm doing something that all this other stuff's allowing me to do, you know? So it's all just preparing me for where I'm at now.
Well, it's been great talking with you. One last question. If you were a an art student at an
Yep.
art school, and you were looking at getting into animation and moving to LA, what kind of advice would you give a art student that's considering that career path?
I say, try to get to know people. If you see like something you want to break into, seek out people who are doing what you're doing, people that have more experience than you do. Create opportunities to talk to those people, create opportunities to actually get your foot in the door and actually, even if you're not doing the actual job you want or the, thing you want to do, get into a position where you can be around the people who are doing that thing that you want to do, and like do whatever you can, like make coffee for people, when you're just starting out. And, there's people who have written scripts for The Simpsons, which it's almost impossible to become a writer on The Simpsons. It's like you have to like have done all these different things. But there's guys who like are assistants to producers or writers on the show that over time, because just by showing up, they are able to get that opportunity. Like I couldn't write an episode for The Simpsons. I wouldn't get to do that. I've been on the show for 25 years. They're not going to let me write a show for The Simpsons. It's not going to happen. I mean, maybe it would, but somebody who's at the, writing room every day, like showing up, making sure that everybody has their pencils or whatever, over time, if they want to be a script writer, and they keep showing up and people keep saying, I really want to write, I really want to do this, a writer's going to help them get there. And they're going to eventually get to do that. It might take a long time, but they're going to reach their goal. So I say, do as close to what the thing is that you want to do immediately. If you want to draw for The Simpsons, start drawing and drawing and drawing. Not even necessarily drawing Simpsons characters. In fact, I would say don't do that except for when you're taking the test. But just get good at drawing the figure, because you have to really understand anatomy and how the body works to be able to be a good animator. If you want to do environmental design or background design, learn perspective. Go out and sketch from nature. Understand spatial relationships. Understand depth. I would say as much as you can in terms of networking, and it's really it really is who you know. It's like there's people who are not as talented necessarily as other people, but are really good at being great with people, and they just go so much further because they're not sitting there like this talented artist is like, no one wants to work with me, or I can't seem to get work anywhere. I'm like, yeah, because you're negative. That's what's coming out of your mouth. It's like, I don't want to work with someone that's like, no one ever is going to want to work with me. No, I want to like get a guy on my show that's like, what else could I do to help? What else can I do to help? I really want to do this. How can you help me do this? That's what I want to hear. I want a go-getter, and that's how I've been most of the time. Like if I want something, like I just like find a way in there, that's what I suggest. Be positive, get out there and get into a position that you want to go in one way or another. If it's coffee that you're pouring, don't make that wrong. That could be like, you could like spill coffee on a producer and the guy be like, most people I wouldn't like that did that, but because you did it, let's write the script together or something, something, who knows? But like, you never know. It's like those kinds of chance meetings, like, just propel careers. You just never know.
We hear that time and time again. So that's great advice.
Yep.
Man, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with us this evening, away from your family, and telling all these great stories and talking about your journey and showing us a little bit behind the curtain of what the animation world looks like on The Simpsons.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
It's been great. Yeah. And we'd love to talk to you again sometime
Sure.
in the future, and hopefully we'll be talking about your new project. So
yeah, hopefully, soon I'll be able to be more public about it and share that it's going to be on like Hulu or Netflix or, and or wherever it's going to end up, but it's going to end up somewhere. And you're going to see it. So
yeah, we wish you all
we'll
the
talk
luck.
about it then. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks, Todd.
On that note, for the Tenant Podcast, this is Todd Pearson.
And this is Wes Brown. Have a great week.